We are live on a Wednesday here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app, and live video streaming on our YouTube channel. Search 973 ESPN. What's going on, everybody? I'm your host, Mike Gill. Josh Henning is producing today's show. You out there, a lot to discuss. Hopefully you're all having a good Wednesday. It's still freezing cold outside. Snow's finally off the roads. I think we've got a ton to dive into today with the Week 18 here, what these games actually mean, which games actually have meaning. I think a big conversational point is the matchup between Philadelphia and Dallas. Somebody just texted in something. I got to read that off, and we'll react to it in just a minute. We can always get your text messages on the text board, 609 403 0973 609 403 0973. That's the way that you can get in touch with the show. We are, of course, live here on a Wednesday where Joe Valerio will talk football with us tonight. Jeff Kerr will be here as well. I'll do my NFL Fine Five, Ugly Five for week number 17 in the books. Paul Hudrick will talk some Sixers. They're back in action tonight against a awful Orlando Magic team. And then, of course, Mike McGarry joins us in about 40 minutes from now. You know, a lot of the conversation we had yesterday was on this narrative about Howie Roseman. So I tweeted out the question. I wanted to get some reaction through my social media platforms. I mean, I had a lot of people yesterday texting the show, but, you know, we have a bunch of people that follow us on social media and like to interact on Twitter. So we posted the question on Twitter that we asked today over at Mike Gill Show was my question yesterday, which never really got a good answer. What draft picks did Howie Roseman egregiously miss on other than Rieger over Jefferson? That one really stands out as one. And I got a lot of reaction to it. I did get a lot of conversation over there. So I will read off some of those throughout the day. I feel like, you know, context is king with a lot of these things, right? And there is like no line of demarcation for people. You know, sometimes a guy is just good. He's not great. He's not the worst. Sometimes he's just okay. I think Roseman is kind of in the middle of the pack. He's had moments where he does certain things that put him in the higher echelon, and he does things that make him go the opposite direction. But this narrative that he's the worst of the worst, I think that's the line of demarcation that I have a problem with. And that's really what I say. Like, to me, the NFL is a tough one. The Eagles, for those of you out there who aren't aware, all right, the Eagles are one of the top franchises in the NFL since 1995. They send us their notes after each game, and the note that they sent out on January the 2nd after they beat the Washington football team was that Philadelphia is guaranteed a winning season for the fourth time since 2017 and the 17th time under Jeffrey Lurie's ownership. The Eagles' 17 winning seasons since 1995 are the fifth most in the league, behind New England, Green Bay, Indianapolis, and Pittsburgh. The Philadelphia Eagles, who apparently most people in our listening audience have a really hard time coming to terms, are a successful franchise. Now, you could say, what do those teams have? New England has multiple Super Bowls. Green Bay has a couple of Super Bowls, but really they have one in the same time frame. You know, it's not like the Green Bay Packers are rolling Lombardi's trophy down the street every other season here. They've only won championships since, I think they won two. I think they got one in 97. So the one in 2011 they got with Rodgers, and the one in 97 they got with Brett Favre. So they have two championships in the time that Jeff Lurie has owned the team. The Indianapolis Colts have one, and the Pittsburgh Steelers have two in the same time frame since 1995. How many does Pittsburgh have since 1995? The Pittsburgh Steelers since 95 have two. They won in 2009 and they won in 2006. So Philadelphia is in company, right, with teams they should be. New England's won 6, Green Bay's won 2, Indianapolis won 1, Philadelphia's won 1, Pittsburgh's won 2. They are the 5th best franchise in football since Jeffrey Lurie has purchased the team. And I feel like people have a hard time with that. I feel like people have a really hard time saying that. And it goes to they don't like Jeffrey Lurie, or I don't know that they don't like Jeffrey Lurie. I think it's really they don't like Roseman. For whatever reason, they just do not like Roseman. And there's the narrative that he's horrible. He misses on all these picks. And look, I'm just trying to be an objective bystander here. I'm not like, do I think he's the worst of the worst? No, I don't. Do I think he's the best of the best? I don't. I actually get kind of surprised. Like yesterday, I saw Pro Football Focus. They ranked Roseman as the 5th best GM in football, number 5. Now, based on since 1995, the Eagles have the 5th most postseason wins in the NFL. They have 15 wins in the playoffs. The only teams that have more are the Patriots, Packers, Steelers, Ravens, and Colts. And the Colts have 15. The Eagles have 15. So it's Patriots, Packers, Steelers, Ravens. Those 4 teams have more postseason wins than Philadelphia does. Since 1995, when Jeff Lurie owned the team, the Eagles reached the playoffs 16 times, right? Which is basically what? Patriots 21, Packers 20, and Colts 18. These are from Reuben Frank, by the way, over at NBC Sports Philadelphia, who posted these on his Twitter page. I was looking through the notes that the Eagles sent. He kind of furthered those notes, so good job by Rube. So think about that. We sit here almost on a daily basis and complain about a franchise who has been to the playoffs 16 times since 1995. There's only 1, 2, 3 teams in the entire league who have done it more. New England, Green Bay, and Indianapolis. And New England, Green Bay, and Indianapolis all have what? A steady quarterback. The Patriots had Tom Brady for all of those. The Packers had Brett Favre and then Aaron Rodgers. And the Colts had Peyton Manning and then Andrew Luck. The Eagles have not been awarded such quarterback stability. So that's to me, maybe that's what is so mind-boggling to me. It's not even like I'm not sitting here pounding the pulpit saying, you guys are dumb. How do you not see what Howie Roseman does? He's great. That's not what I'm saying. I just don't understand how people could be like, this is the worst of the worst guy when I just read you those things. They have been to the playoffs 16 times since 1995. Only 3 teams have gone to the playoffs more than that. Like, what more? I mean, unless you want to be the Patriots and you want the elite of the elite, that means your standards are extremely high, and that's okay. I have no problem saying you want to be the best of the best. But if you're saying you want to be the best of the best and you won't accept anything else, then you're going to be constantly disappointed, whether it's Howie Roseman or whatever other guy comes in here and is the GM of the team, because realistically, I don't see any other franchise going on a run like the New England Patriots just went on over the last 20 years. Even the Packers, who have been to the playoffs 20 times since 1995, they've got Aaron Rodgers. They had Brett Favre. You're going to make the playoffs if those guys are your quarterbacks. The Colts had Peyton Manning. You're going to make the playoffs if Peyton Manning's your quarterback. Now, the Packers won 1 Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers, and the Colts won 1 Super Bowl with Peyton Manning. So even though they've had this unbelievable run of playoff appearances, and you might say Chris Ballard is a great GM, which he's good. I mean, they're 9-7 out in Indianapolis. The Indianapolis Colts are 9-7. They won more games last year with Phillip Rivers at 38 years old than they've won this year. So Chris Ballard's done a really good job. I'm not ripping Chris Ballard. But they're a 9-7 team, and people out there are like faunting over GMs of teams that are 9-7. You want to tell me the guy in Green Bay, who, by the way, people are ripping Howie Roseman because they feel like his relationship with Wentz tarnished that situation. What about the guy in Green Bay's relationship with Aaron Rodgers? Why didn't Aaron Rodgers want to be there? Because him and the GM didn't see eye to eye. Well, when push came to shove, the GM won that battle. Aaron Rodgers is still there. He's going to win the MVP, and they might win their second Super Bowl with him out there. So the whole situation, to me, I find it to be just more mind-boggling than I do picking a side here. Like, I'm just saying, all right, let me try to objectively look at this. Like, there's a guy who's been tweeting at me all day, and look, I'll respond and try to, I'm trying to be objective when I respond. Like, if you make a good point, I say that point is accurate. You are right on the money with that one. Jeff Mosher tweeted at me today. Now, I was under the impression that Howie Roseman did not run the draft in 2014, the Demarcus Smith year.
Right.
Mosher is telling me that he did run that draft. If that's the case and he picked Marcus Smith, that's an awful miss.
Right. That's a huge demerit against him.
Huge demerit against him. However, over a 10-year span of drafting, I got to factor in that you're going to miss a guy. Now, Marcus Smith, to me, is a major miss, a major reach, because I don't think Marcus Smith was even a first-round grade.
No, he was definitely not.
So that's why that one, to me, if Mosher's accurate, I have no reason to believe he wouldn't be. He has certainly better contacts and sources inside the Eagles organization than I would. I have no reason to believe that Mosher is off base.
Also, I'm not saying this because we know Mosher, but because I know Mosher, I can say this. He's not like some of the people who cover the team who have built-in biases about certain things. So he's a very fair and honest, balanced guy when it comes to reporting on the team.
And Mosher will join me at 4:00 today, so I can ask him a little bit more.
Yeah.
The 14 draft, the 14 season is it's where things got a little murky because the whole Chip Kelly, he wanted more say. Roseman got thrown down the hallway. Well, it was somewhere in the middle of that whole situation.
Well, Mike, here's the thing. So Howie may have been the guy who called in the pick, as Mosher is saying. But if you go back to our conversation yesterday, we talked about what happened with Rager and Hertz. There are multiple reports, Sal Powell here on the Sports Bash, other people have reported that Doug Peterson wanted Jalen Rager. He wanted Jalen Hertz. So, yeah, Howie may have been like, I'm going to pick Marcus Smith, but could Chip Kelly have gone to Howie and being like, I want you to pick this guy too? So I don't think we can totally void culpability of other people involved.
Listen, somebody asked me about the whole Roseman thing. How many drafts has he actually run? And I said, to be honest with you, that's really hard to quantify. My guess would be, now I was covering the team a lot closer. I was going up to NovaCare weekly back in like 2011, 12, in that time frame.
The end of the Andy Reid era.
Correct. So I was in the building when that whole situation happened, when Reid lost basically personnel control.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff Lurie came out. He basically said, I think we might even have this bite somewhere if we can remember. But Lurie came out and he basically said, listen, the last couple years, Andy's been running the draft. Howie's had his own draft board separate from Andy's.
Right.
But we've been going off of Andy's draft board. It turns out that Roseman's draft board has been better than Andy's, and now we're going to give personnel control over to Howie.
I remember this because I remember reading this in a lot of the news reports, like in the Inquirer and stuff after the press conference. I remember this.
Well, I was there. I mean, I was literally in the building when this whole press conference happened. And this was 2012. That was the first draft class,
Right.
and that was Fletcher Cox.
Right.
So I want to say the first draft class that Roseman would get some sort of credit for would be 2012. Fletcher Cox was the first pick. Now, somebody brought up an interesting conversation, which is the fact that the Eagles have not been able to get a high-end defensive talent in the draft during the Roseman era. All right, to which I said, you're assuming there was a high-end defensive talent every single draft when they picked in that spot.
Right.
So if you go back and look through their draft classes, you got to go back and say, all right, well, here's part of the issue. He took Fletcher Cox. He got a high-end draft player. The problem was it was so long ago.
Right.
In 13, they had the fourth pick. They took Lane Johnson. They didn't take a defensive player.
And that was the right pick, honestly.
Right. If you go back to 2013, they took Lane Johnson. You could have said, hey, you could have took, I don't know. I mean, Sheldon Richardson was a Pro Bowler.
But he fizzled out. He had a lot of trouble off the field.
Right. I'm saying, like, if you would have told me you shouldn't have taken Lane Johnson, you should have taken a defensive player who would have been an impact player, there really wasn't one to take. So they took the player they should have taken in that spot.
Right.
That's really all you can ask. So you're telling me they didn't take an impact player. So in 14, the next season, they took Marcus Smith. Well, that's where they really whiffed. But I'm looking around that area, and I'm saying, all right, where was there a player? All right, the first guy you could say they could have got Demarcus Lawrence, who was a second-round pick that year.
And he was like a late first round, early second round guy anyway.
Right. Now,
he was a guy you could have rationalized.
But I'm saying, of all the picks, Marcus Smith, they completely whiffed on.
Right.
But I'm looking around Marcus Smith. The next pick was DeJuan Buchanan, Kelvin Benjamin, Dominique Easley, Jamie Ward, Bradley Roby, Teddy Bridgewater. The second round starts Demarcus Lawrence. After Demarcus Lawrence, now the guy that I really liked was Kyle Van Noy, but you weren't taking him at the 14th pick in the draft.
No, he was definitely a second round grade.
Right. So
he was a little slow coming out of college.
Marcus Smith was a total miss. But to be fair, there's not really a guy anywhere in the draft class near him that they would have taken that would have fixed anything for this team.
I mean, the only
guys I just mentioned.
Yeah.
Demarcus Lawrence. If you took Demarcus Lawrence at number 26, he went 34. Right. You could have said, all right, Demarcus Lawrence is a better player than Marcus Smith.
I think the only guy that you named I would have been like, that would have been fun to see, would have been Jimmy Ward, because he turned into a pretty good safety. Not like a Pro Bowl safety, obviously, but a pretty good safety with the 49ers. Mm-hmm. He would have been a nice player.
A nice player. But people are acting like if you took Marcus Smith, if you would have changed that pick and picked somebody else, there was just not another guy. Now, Devontae Adams got picked at 63. If you would have taken him in the first round, right? But that's hindsight being way 2020.
Adams did not have a great grade coming out of college either.
Allen Robinson got picked at 61. The Eagles took Jordan Matthews at 42. Now you're getting into really nitpicking in the second round.
Right. Right. At that point, you're really, doing a dime and a nickel and a quarter.
But this goes back to what the guy's saying, though. He's saying that the impact defensive players. They took Marcus Smith. Total miss. I'm not.
No one denies that. No one denies that.
What I'm saying is, at 26 in that draft, who else should they have taken that would have been a hit for them? And I don't see a guy. You could, all right, Demarcus Lawrence has been he's come on late. He's been a kind of a late bloomer.
He's a 2-time Pro Bowler.
Yeah, I mean, he had those 2 big years of double-digit sacks, but before that, he was kind of and then since then, he's been kind of – he's not – I mean, he had 14 and a half sacks when he was in his prime, but he has not been the same player since then.
Here's part of the problem with a lot of these conversations. When we talk about some of the misses when it comes to the draft, some of those misses were necessary for other changes to happen. Like, if the Eagles didn't have what happened in 2014 and 15 happen, Chip Kelly might not have been run out of town. If things didn't go the way they did last year, Doug doesn't get fired, Sirianni isn't brought in, and maybe you're not in a situation now where you're going to the postseason. There's so many what ifs that go into this stuff that when you start trying to say, well, they just would have picked this guy, but then there's a domino effect after that. It's the whole, it's the whole theory of the butterfly effect. That's the word I'm looking for. It's the butterfly effect theory. It's the idea that if one thing happens, something else doesn't happen. So who knows if they didn't, if they would have done better in 14 and 15 with the draft, is Chip Kelly still here? Do the Eagles never win the Super Bowl? And are we complaining even more right now, saying, man, I miss that Howie Roseman?
Yeah. I doubt anybody will ever say that.
No, they won't. But the point, Mike, is that, sometimes when we nitpick and we nickel and dime some of these things, we don't want to factor in the consequences. Every action has a consequence.
I'm looking through the Marcus Smith one. That's a bad pick. But again, let's just say they fixed that pick by taking somebody different. I can't sit here and say, man, if they would have taken DeJuan Buchanan, that they would be in a much better place right now.
No, you would probably feel better about your safety situation, but you wouldn't be like, man, that would have changed everything.
Right. I mean, he's just been a solid player. He's nothing special.
Right. I mean, he's better
in the league still.
Yeah. He's
down in Tampa, right?
He's listed as an active player right now.
Yeah, I think he has been hurt, though.
He's in Tampa. He's currently injured.
Right.
Yes.
I was going to say, I thought he was hurt. I haven't heard anything from him.
He had some nice years.
Yeah. No, he's been a nice player. I'm not debating that. I'm just saying he's not a difference-making player.
No, but he would have been a guy that would have made sense for you. But the thing is again, that doesn't change everything.
Keep in mind, at that time, I'm trying to think. No, they signed Malcolm Jenkins, in 13, 14, somewhere around there?
I think it was 13. Let me double check.
When Chip Kelly got here, they signed him. The next year, the Eagles in the first round. See, I'm looking more if they took Nelson Aguilar.
That was 15. That was Chip Kelly.
And that was a Chip Kelly draft.
Yeah.
See, now, if you go back to that draft and say they took Aguilar there at number 20, even though he's a miss, and look, I'm trying to be fair to Chip as well. They took Aguilar there at 20. You could have said, okay, Bud Dupree was a nice player at 22.
By the way, Malcolm's first year was 2014.
So 2014, yeah, that same draft class. So they signed a safety. That's why they didn't draft a
Buchanan
safety.
Buchanan or Ward.
Correct.
Although you could have had two safeties, because Buchanan and Ward are more of those box hard-hitting safeties, and Malcolm could have still been the coverage guy. But
they used Malcolm all over. They used him as a linebacker. They used him all over the place.
Well, Jim Schwartz did. Billy Davis was a little lost, dazed, and confused.
So Aguilar was the pick in 15. He went 20. There's not really another wide receiver anywhere near him. I mean, like I said, you could Bashard Perryman. If you told me at 20 they took Nelson Aguilar and instead they took Byron Jones. I mean, Byron Jones had a nice run with the Dallas Cowboys, but I don't know.
I mean, to me, the only guys of recognition after the Aguilar pick are Bud Dupree. You mentioned Byron Jones. I mean, now you're really stretching. I mean, the Patriots have a bust right here at 32 with Malcolm Brown. I mean, Landon Collins was the first pick in the second round.
Yeah. Now, again, in 16, they had the second pick. They took Wentz. I mean, you could say, hey,
they could have twice for that pick.
Right. And well, you could say, hey, you could have got an impact defensive player if you didn't take Wentz. Well, you wouldn't have been in the number 2 spot. The only reason you were there is because you went to go get Wentz. You weren't going to trade all the way up there to go get Bosa or Jalen Ramsey.
Right. I mean, if you would
not from where they were anyway.
I mean, if you would have stayed at where did they stay at? It was 8, I believe, was the original.
Yeah,
pick.
I think they were like 13, then to 8. They moved up twice.
They moved twice.
They were at 13 with the Dolphins.
And then
they went to 8 with Tennessee or Cleveland.
and then they moved up
and
to
then they
2.
moved up to 2.
Right. So, I mean,
Because the first 7 picks of that draft class, Goff, Wentz, Bosa, Zeke Elliott, Jalen Ramsey, Ronnie Stanley, and DeForest Buckner
and
have
Jack
all
Conklin.
made the Pro Bowl.
And Conklin, I think, too.
He has not been a Pro Bowler
He
yet.
hasn't?
No.
Okay. He's still a pretty good tackle.
Yeah. Oh, that's the first 8 picks of that draft have all been pretty good.
Then it gets dicey. It gets dicey because then you got Leonard Floyd, who's been solid but not great. Eli Apple, he's basically turned into a vagabond. He's on his, 3rd team now, I believe. Vernon Hargraves, I mean, that guy just has not worked out. Sheldon Rankins has been a very good but not great guy. Tunsil has been traded, and he's been a little underwhelming at times. So it's not like every guy after those picks were great. I mean, Taylor Decker, you could argue, is a pretty good player. You know, now you're nickel and diming it. You know, you get on the list here.
Well, and I think this is, again, trying to just put context into this whole situation where this guy tweets at me and says, how could they not get one impact defensive player? I'm showing you where they picked and who they took and then what was around them.
Right.
As to why sometimes, yeah, they make a pick and they missed on a guy. But if you look at I try to keep it within like 7 to 10 picks after them.
I try to look through at least the first 5 and see what the first 5 are and then make a decision after that.
226 Sports Bash, Mike McGarry in about 15 minutes. Sports Bash brought to you by Matt Blatt Kia. They want to get you approved today. Matt Blatt, 6211 Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township. We're back with you on a Wednesday, Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. I'm Mike Gill at Mike Gill Show. Wow, the comments section over on the video chat is blowing up right now. We can get to those as well as your text messages. 609 403 0973. 609 403 0973. Jump on board. We'll read a lot of your texts off in this segment. Mike McGarry coming up in about 8 minutes from now. We'll get to that here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. All right, so I was looking at a couple other of the draft classes. I like going back and looking through these things and just kind of saying, man, there's a couple of things, too, we have to keep in mind. Just because a player is good on one team doesn't mean if you took that guy, he was going to be good for your team. How many times do we see a quarterback go to one place and, you're like, hey, he's just in the wrong system or he's not very good, or a cornerback. Hey, on that team, they play man. Well, on this team, they don't play man, and it doesn't suit his skill set. Nnamdi Asomugha comes to mind. As a guy in Oakland, he was a very good corner. Well, then you brought him to Philadelphia, and he was not a very good corner.
Right.
So just because a player is good for that team doesn't mean he's going to be good for your team.
Right. The system matters. Look at a guy like Kurt Warner, right? He was great with the Rams, horrible with the Giants, and then great again with the Cardinals. He was on 3 different teams in one situation, which is not good for him, and it didn't work out. And that dude's in the Hall of Fame, for goodness sake.
Right. So, yeah, the talent of a guy, you would hope if your team gets that guy, they would know what to do with him.
You would hope.
Like, I could draft a player and be like, what the hell are my coaches missing with this guy? This guy's great. And then he goes someplace else, and you're like, people were tweeting at me the other day about Rasul Douglas. Rasul Douglas, look, I'm a huge Rasul Douglas guy. He went to West Virginia. I really enjoyed Douglas. He's been on 6 teams. He's been cut 60 million different times. I mean, the Eagles cut him, the Carolina cut him, Oakland cut him. He's been all over the place.
Did he have a cup of coffee in Jacksonville, too?
He's been everywhere. But he's finally found a system and a team, apparently, that works for his skill set.
Right.
So you might say, well, Roseman drafted Rasul Douglas. Douglas is having a great year in Green Bay. He didn't work out here. So would you say Roseman was a bust pick? Or would you say that's the coach's fault? There's a lot of things that come into play as to why some guys succeed or fail. Now, you might say, well, then you shouldn't draft a player that won't fit into your system.
Sure, but that's great in theory. But in application, it's not always that simple. You drafted Rasul Douglas with the theory that he was going to work. Then you got here and you realize it's not working as well.
Well, people would say you should scout that out. You should see that his skill set doesn't match what your defensive coordinator wants to do.
Well, go back to what Howie said before the draft this year. He said, we are looking forward to seeing the guys we've drafted with the new coaching staff. In other words, Howie was literally telling everybody, I drafted guys and it didn't work with Doug. I want to see if they work with Sirianni.
That was
back in April.
Right. That was the 19 or 20. I mean, to be fair, though, Rieger has not worked out.
You could say Hertz has.
Hertz has, yes, so far.
I think Hertz is better so far under Sirianni than with Doug.
Absolutely. But I'm saying, he said, hey, we liked our draft class. We think that the new coaching staff, Rieger has not worked out. Davion Taylor was a guy that many people didn't think was going to get on the field anyway, so it's hard to say.
But he was ascending before he got injured.
And, yeah, he was starting for this team, and then he got hurt. Kayvon Wallace got hurt. Jack Driscoll's been excellent. When he's played, he's been very good.
But you still have Jeff Stoutland. So that's, offensive lineman, you kind of got to take out of the conversation because Stoutland's still here.
Listen, you go through the draft class of 2018. They'd had no first-round pick that year.
They traded up for Goddard.
And in that draft, they end up getting Dallas Goedert. Well, right now, he's your best offensive weapon, right? Dallas Goedert's your best offensive weapon.
Stud.
And you got him in the second round. And nobody says, you know what? man, they really pulled off a good deal and ended up getting a guy in the second round, pick number
Yo,
49.
you never hear anybody say, "Listen, man, you traded up and took Dallas Goedert away from the Dallas Cowboys. Good job, Howie." Never
Well,
hear that.
it's funny though because people don't they want to nitpick certain picks, and then when you give them like second and third round, that guy tweeted at me today. Well, he took Donnell Pumphrey in the fourth round when other running backs were available. I'm like, my gosh, I get it. Like you're going to make misses in the fourth, fifth round. Like that's pretty unscientific. Once you get to the fourth and fifth round, they took Avonte Maddox in the fourth round. There, he's turned out to be a really good player for this team.
We talked about Jordan Mailata yesterday.
Mailata, obviously, this is one draft. In the one draft class, they took Avonte Maddox. They took Dallas Goedert. I don't think they had a third round. They didn't have a first
I think
rounder.
they had Josh Sweat in that
and
draft.
They didn't have a third rounder. They took Maddox in the fourth, and they took Josh Sweat. So they had no first and no third.
Right.
And ended up getting three
starters.
Maybe more. Three. I'm going through the sixth round. Matt Pryor's not here anymore. So they took 5 players in that draft. 4 of them are starting contributing players. Jordan Mailata, Josh Sweat, Avonte Maddox, and Dallas Goedert. They had 5 picks. 4 of them are all starters. So think about that. All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. Mike McGarry going to join us on the other side. We'll get his take on that. We'll get his take on more. Sports Bash coming up. Don't forget, you can watch the show live on our YouTube channel. I got a lot of comments on the YouTube channel, so we'll read those off in the 3 o'clock hour. Keep the comments coming. 609-403-0973 on the text board. All right, Sports Bass Live, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. What's going on, everybody? I'm Mike Gill. Good conversation, a lot of reaction if you're watching the show on YouTube. We appreciate everybody who's watching the show over there. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City going to jump in on the conversation. We got a lot going on. Eagles-Cowboys this weekend. I don't know if seeding really has a big impact for anybody here. I know the Cowboys can move up a little bit. Philly can be 6 or 7. That is it. They can't go any further than that. Dallas can be 4, 3, or 2. They cannot be 1, and they cannot drop down. Somebody texted in earlier and said that they want to play this game because they don't want to fall behind Arizona, but they cannot fall behind Arizona because they are a division champion. So the lowest they can go is number 4. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City is back for another conversation. He's brought to you by Calvi Electric, now offering residential services for your home and business. Online, calvielectric.com. Michael, what's up, man?
Hey, Mike, how are you?
I'm doing good. The conversation the last 48 hours seems to be on the job that Roseman has done in getting the Eagles back to the playoffs. It seems like it's kind of all over the place on social media. And I don't know that there's a guy that there is any line for demarcation of, hey, you know what? He's this or that. It's either this guy's the worst of the worst, or I don't even know if there's any other side. I don't know too many people who flat out appreciate or like the guy. But what kind of role has he had, do you think, in this organization's success? And I say that, Mike, I'm sure you get the same notes I have. They've been 17th time that they've had winning teams since 1995. They've been to the playoffs the 5th most times in the league over that time. There's more and more that we could throw out there. So what kind of role does Roseman have to you in this organization's success?
Well, among the many things I don't understand about a lot of Philadelphia Eagles fans is I don't understand the attitude towards Harry Roseman. I mean, I don't understand what more do you want this guy to do? I mean, he won a Super Bowl in 2017, and then they made the playoffs 3 of the past 4 seasons since that. So they've been a relevant football team, a playoff football team 4 of the last 5 years. He's coming up. Has he missed on some draft picks? Absolutely. Rager, Arcega-Whiteside, yes, have been misses. You know, he could have had Justin Jefferson. He could have traded up for CeeDee Lamb. He could have done this. He could have done that. But he also has his successes. And the draft that he just had with Landon Dickerson and Devontae Smith, it appears to be a good draft. And now, although I kind of laughed at it when he did it, I mean, picking Hertz in the 2nd round when you had Wentz looks like a good pick also. So I don't understand the dislike or the feeling that he doesn't deserve any credit. I really don't know where it comes from. That's one thing I don't understand. The other thing I don't understand is Eagles fans who say they don't even want to be in the playoffs right now. They'd rather be out of the playoffs and get better draft picks. Those are 2 things I don't understand. I don't understand what Roseman did to people. Did he steal their lunch money or something? You know, kick their Eagles lunch box or something? I don't understand why a lot of Eagles fans don't like him.
It's a fair question that you asked, Mike. Reuben Frank put these out. Since 95, they have the 5th most playoff wins in the entire NFL. The Patriots, Packers, Steelers, Ravens are the only teams that have more wins in the playoffs. And since 95, they have been to the playoffs 16 times. The only teams that have been there more: Patriots with Brady, Packers, Rodgers, Colts, Manning, Philadelphia, a rotating cast of quarterbacks. I mean, it's a miracle that they have had the success that they have had based on the quarterback situation.
Yeah, and the other thing that they've done, Mike, which can't be underestimated, is they navigated a transition from a great coach. Andy Reid was a great coach. He had his 14-year run here, tremendous amount of success. A lot of times when you move on from that great coach, it's a problem. Now they're on their 3rd coach since Andy Reid, but and I know we look back and we say, well, Chip Kelly didn't do this, but Chip Kelly won a division, right, and got them to the playoffs. And Peterson won a Super Bowl, and now Sirianni's in the playoffs in his first year. And that's another thing that Roseman deserves credit for. I mean, he was in on the hiring of Sirianni, and right now Sirianni looks like a pretty good hire. I mean, would you rather have Sirianni coach your team or Urban Meyer or Joe Judge? So although it pains me to say it as an outside observer and no lover of the Eagles, I mean, I don't know how you look at Harry Roseman and think that he should be gone or he should be taken out of his role. I think he deserves kudos for what he's done. Has he hit on every pick? No, but no GM does, basically. And how they've stayed relevant and in playoff contention since the Super Bowl is really something that, they deserve credit for.
Well, how much of this, Mike, you asked, I don't understand why people don't like this guy. I contend the man's name, Howie Roseman, the way that he talks, the way that he looks. I think people kind of look at him as this geeky guy and they just don't respect him. It's solely based on appearance to me.
Yeah, I can see that. Some of his quotes in press conferences and stuff like that, I guess, and I've been in press conferences with him and I've been on the Zoom calls with him. And I guess, he doesn't have a personality that comes in and takes over the room, right? He's not, I wouldn't say on his charisma on a scale of 1 to 10 is not a 10. And he can be a little arrogant with his answers sometimes. The quarterback factory answer sticks out and stuff like that. But
Right.
if you just look at his record, basically, I don't know how you knock it, basically. And these guys that sit here and kind of say, wish for somebody else to run the organization, be careful what you wish for, basically. To me, it kind of reminds me of how Eagles fans sort of felt about Andy Reid, too. Andy Reid, for all his success here, there were some Eagles fans that kind of knocked him, and you can't win the big one, do this. A lot of it's in common. I mean, go tap on the shoulder of a Giants fan, go tap on the shoulder of a Jets fan, go tap on the shoulder of the Washington football team fan, and go ask them how they feel about their teams right now. And some of what they've been through the past years, and then take a fresh look at Harry Roseman and come back to me and tell me that you think Harry Roseman shouldn't be running your football team. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, look, and the ones that stand out, you make a pick like Rieger, and then the next pick's Jefferson. That stands out, and I almost feel like that overshadows almost like 3 years worth of, like, that is just so egregious. But again, I went even like Marcus Smith, which was an egregious miss. I mean, just an awful pick. I just look back at that draft, and like the next 10 picks after Smith, there's not a guy that was taken that would have helped this team out. Now, that's not absolving you from making the mistake, but really there wasn't another player within like 10 to 12 picks that had an impact in the league at all. So I don't know how you quantify those type of things.
Look, the draft is hit or miss, right? To a large degree, it's an inexact science, and nobody is going to get every pick right. I mean, I'm reading a book right now, about the Patriots. It's better to be feared. It's about the Patriots dynasty. Go look at Belichick's draft record in some years. He's probably the greatest coach of all time, running a franchise at the NFL that's probably the greatest franchise of all time, and maybe the greatest franchise in all of sports. And he's had drafts that have been disaster, where he hasn't gotten a player out of a draft. He has some positions. Everybody says Howie has struggled at wide receiver. Look at the Patriots and then their draft picks of wide receivers and how they've struggled, basically. You're not going to get every pick right, but there's been enough picks right there, and especially this is not the year. If the Eagles were coming off 4 wins, if they won 4 wins a game and their draft was terrible, they have some ammunition. But they're not 7. They're in the playoffs, and wide receivers about to set a record, or maybe already has set a record for most reception yards by a Eagles rookie. And in Landon Dickerson, you got a guy who might be here, start on the offensive line the next 5 to 10 years. I don't know how you look at this draft and what they've done. And knock Howie Roseman.
Right. And then, of course, they missed on Dillard, we think. If Dillard would play, the problem is he got beat out by a guy you drafted in the 7th round. So you get kudos for hitting on the 7th round, but missing on the guy in the 1st round. That's another odd dynamic.
Yeah, that's just life of personnel picks, right? I mean, everybody, when he picked Mailata and Mailata got off to a slow start, everybody's like, what are they doing, bringing this guy in from Australia who never played football before? Well, now that looks pretty smart. You're just not going to hit on every player. And I think they deserve some credit, too, for people kind of forget because these injuries happened early in the season. But, they lost the 2 Brandons, one on the defensive line, one on the offensive line. And they've been able to overcome that with some depth and guys they picked and everything. So, again,
yeah,
I think a lot of his free agent signings have been pretty good. Now, obviously, the Kerrigan guy didn't work out well, but some of the other guys have. Dallas Goedert is a good pick. I mean, they've got young, talented players. Again, I don't understand what more people want from the guy he's delivered basically so far.
All right, Mike, we'll end with this. How is this going to end for the Tobias Harris thing that's suddenly kind of permeating?
To me, this is just it's almost like another day in the office. Tobias Harris is in a tough situation because of the contract. Is he a max player? I don't think he is. The Sixers had almost no choice at that point to offer him the money. And if you look around the NBA, there's 20 guys like Tobias Harris that are kind of being overpaid and were just in the right circumstance at the right time. He got a little frustrated the other night. It sets off a debate. Do fans have the right to boo? Who knows? When it comes to the Sixers, here's two things I know.
Who knows?
One, here's two things I know. Embiid is playing great. He's back to playing the way he played last year when he was an MVP level candidate. And if the Sixers don't move Simmons soon and get him some help to be able to make a run in the playoffs, that instead of being mad at Harry Roseman, turn your attention to Daryl Morey. That's who you should be questioning right now. Leave Harry Roseman alone. That guy's earned a little moments of peace. Everybody start asking Daryl Morey what he's doing and when he's going to get help in here for Joel Embiid, who's playing as well as anybody in the league right now.
All right, there you go. That's a good way to end it today with Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City, who joined us here on the Sports Bash. All right, Mike, have a great rest of your Wednesday.
All right, you too. See you later.
I like that one. Leave Howie Roseman alone. Turn your attention to Daryl Morey. That's who you should be ticked off at, he says. All right, we'll read off all your text, the comments over on the video stream. If you want to get involved, I'll open up the text board right now. Get in, 609-403-0973. All right, we're back here. Hour 2, Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. Good conversation with Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. He'll be back on Friday's show. Stick around. Later on, we got Joe Valerio, former NFLer, 5 o'clock Cup of Joe right here on the Sports Bash. Now, I got text messages. I got video messages. If you're watching the show live on the video stream, you can always hit us up in the comments section. Now, the comments have been just blowing up over there. Those people are going back and forth with each other. They're really having it out. So I will try to break up some of these fights. All right? I'll do my best to try to break up some of the fights that are happening in the comment section. Actually, I will say there's no name calling going on over there. They've done a good job.
No, there's no name calling. And honestly, it's funny to watch like them have their own conversation while we're having our conversation.
Right. They're kind of listening to the show, and then I'm saying something, and then they're reacting to it, and then they're going off of reactions of other people that are in the video stream.
I have this visual. It's like a bunch of guys at a virtual bar. They're all just kind of hanging around talking about what they're listening to or watching.
Dom Corleone is watching the show on YouTube. He says Howie's biggest issue is when he's tried to outsmart people in the draft. Rager is the most recent flub when Jefferson was there. That being said, we're better off building around Devontae Smith. I mean, that's a fair – I mean, again, Rager as a miss is the most egregious of them all.
But he's right, though. You wouldn't have Devonta potentially.
So who would you rather have, Devonta or Jefferson? I still think I'd rather have –
I'd have Devonta.
You think Devonta Smith is going to be a more productive, better receiver than – I mean, that's pretty bold right there.
Well, part of the reason why –
for God's sakes, Justin Jefferson is breaking Randy Moss's records.
Sure, but the problem with Jefferson is that he walked into a perfect situation. If he doesn't have Kirk Cousins as his quarterback, chucking him the ball 100-plus targets a year, he's not putting up those numbers. Devonta Smith is doing things in an offense that's predominantly a running offense.
Yeah.
And he's still making big plays. I don't know if I've said multiple times, Mike, and you've heard me say this. If you would have swapped Rager and Jefferson situations, Jefferson is not the same production in Philadelphia.
Well, I have said if you're people who said they took Rager over Jefferson are assuming that if Jefferson was in Philly, that he would be the same player that he is in Minnesota.
And he's not.
And I don't think that would be accurate.
Because, again,
he is in Minnesota where they have an offense that is just basically Look, you don't like Kirk Cousins, but Kirk Cousins' numbers at the end of the day are outstanding.
Yeah, he's getting like almost 4,000 yards every season.
Right, so context is king. Think about that. Oh, they have Jefferson. They also have Kirk Cousins, who you don't like.
Right, the guy who throws in the ball.
Right. People don't like Kirk Cousins, but his numbers, if I just took Kirk Cousins' nameplate off of that, you would say, my God, I'll take that guy.
Right. Here's the thing. To me, Jefferson walked into a perfect situation. They traded away Stephon Diggs.
Still pretty good.
No, he is very good. But they said, look, we're going to trade away Stephon Diggs. We're going to draft this Jefferson guy to fill that void. And it worked out perfectly for everyone involved.
Yeah, if I told you your quarterback had 3,900 yards, 30 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, and a quarterback rating of 101.3.
You'd buy that immediately.
You're telling me you wouldn't say, I'll take that guy. You would say, immediately you would take that guy. And then if I said, that quarterback happens to be Kirk Cousins, you'd be like, I don't really think I want that guy.
Listen, here's my thing. I have said that Kirk Cousins is basically a more efficient version of Drew Bledsoe. Drew Bledsoe had 45,000 passing yards in his career? It wasn't
just
bad.
Like Cousins just lacks the it factor. His numbers are great. His statistics are going to jump off the page. They're just something that lacks from Cousins. And this is where we go to. Jefferson's numbers are fantastic, but Cousins' numbers are also fantastic.
Right.
You don't want Kirk Cousins. So don't tell me it's a slam dunk home run that Justin Jefferson would be. I mean, his numbers that he's got in Minnesota are astronomical. I mean, he's breaking all sorts of Randy Moss's records out there. But don't tell me that if he was in Philadelphia, he would have 1,500 yards and 6 touchdowns this year.
Especially not last year. And by the way, don't forget, Kyle Shanahan wanted Kirk Cousins in San Francisco. He couldn't get him. He settled for Jimmy G, and they went to a Super Bowl. if Kirk Cousins was the quarterback of the 49ers in that Super Bowl, do they win that Super Bowl?
That's a tough one because part of the problem with Cousins is he's come up small in big games.
True.
Now,
But he's
last
healthier
year,
than Jimmy G is.
Jefferson last year had 1,400 yards and 7 touchdowns. This year he has 1,500 yards and 9 touchdowns. Now, last year he had 88 catches. This year he has 103 catches. He has been uberly productive. So that has not helped the perception of if you had that guy, you'd be this.
It's exasperated it.
You would also not have Smith.
Correct.
Now, someone would say, okay, and I'm going to take the other side on this. Let's say you took Jefferson and he was similarly productive.
All right.
And now in the 2021 draft, what pick did you have? You ended up trading up.
Yeah, what did you have, 12?
They had the
I'm pulling up in front of me here.
well, they ended up taking I'm in the wrong draft class. I'm in 2021. They took they were 12. So they moved up to 10. Well, they went up to 6. No, they were 6th.
And they traded back to get the first round pick
12,
this year.
and then they moved right. So you could then say if you took Jefferson, you didn't need to take Smith. You could have taken
Parsons,
Micah Parsons. Maybe if you stayed at number 6 instead of moving back, you could have taken J.C. Horn, Patrick Surtain. My point is you have Jefferson, and then you could have focused on taking the defensive player.
Hey, maybe you could have traded down and grabbed Xavier Collins at 16 and got more picks.
I'm just saying, I'm not throwing in more trade scenarios. I'm just saying if you just stayed where you were.
Gotcha.
If you took Jefferson the year before, you would hope anyway, it would not make you have to take a receiver again this year.
But here's the thing. If you would have taken Jefferson, would you have had a worse pick?
That's a fair comment. Would you have won 4 games? I don't know. Does Jefferson make you win
1-2 more games?
All right. So now instead of picking 6, you're at 10 where you ended up picking anyway.
Or maybe you're lower. Maybe you're like, because
Well,
Dallas
I mean, think
was at
about
12.
it. Dallas was 12.
Dallas
so
didn't win the division.
Dallas
so.
was 12, and they took Parsons.
Right. So maybe you end up with Parsons out of the way.
Exactly. So that's an argument that people can make to say, hey, look, if you took Jefferson the year before, you don't need to take Smith the next year, even though in your mind, and I'm not saying that I'm agreeing with you, you like Smith as a player more than you like Jefferson as a player.
I do. But that's just me.
Just one man's opinion.
It's one man's opinion.
Right. I think I would probably say Jefferson would be, I don't think he's going to be 1,500 yards if he's here, but put this in context. The wide receivers in Philadelphia under this regime right now aren't going to put up the big yardages because they run the ball so often.
Correct.
That's another caveat to all this.
Also, I think Smith is a better blocker. He's a better fit for the offense, whereas Jefferson is more of just a pure receiver.
609-403-0973. Brian Bahari is watching the show on YouTube.
Not David Bakhtiari. Huh?
Nope. He says, my final say is this with Roseman. With Roseman out of Philly, we're going to have way more problems than solutions. Now, I think that's an interesting, take, because I think Brian, and he has been going back and forth in this chat all the way through, he is acknowledging mistakes, but he's also saying, I think the context is king with him. Yes, there are mistakes, but there are a lot of things that he does well that I don't think other guys are going to minimize their mistakes. And when they make mistakes, they're not going to be able to fix those mistakes nearly as well. Like, which GMs in this league would have gotten them out of the mess of problems they have with the contract situations because of Wentz having to be traded? That was a mess to try to get out of that thing.
Right.
You have to trade Wentz, and now you have a $34 million cap hit. You got to figure out how to weave around that thing.
Also, to me, the biggest thing with Howie not being here is the owner. He is here because of the owner. Him and the owner have this relationship. If you have somebody else here, would you be rotating GMs left and right because you can't find a guy to get along with the owner?
Yeah.
That's a big part of people forget about. The person above the GM, what's that relationship like? Look at the organization of the Giants right now. They have gone through 1, 2, 3, 3 or 4 GMs in the last 20 years?
Another part of the Reuben Frank tweeted out the teams that have been the winning franchises.
Mm-hmm.
They've all had stability. With coach, quarterback, and front office for the most part. Belichick, Brady. Green Bay has had Rodgers. They had McCarthy there for years. They had
they had Holmgren and they had Mike Sherman before that.
And then Indianapolis had Peyton Manning there
and then Andrew Luck
for years. The Eagles have not had that stability at quarterback really since McNabb left, but their stability was Andy Reid, Howie Roseman, that the front office and the coach, and now that the front office has remained, they haven't panicked and said, hey, he's had bad draft classes. No one's saying he hasn't. But if you turn into the team, you used to get a 5-year plan.
Right.
Okay, let me see how my 5 years plan. Now, after 2 years, it's like you don't know what you're doing. You're done. You're out.
People are so impatient.
But you're going to make mistakes. Like, you can't hire a guy and say, he's our guy, and then not anticipate that he's going to make a couple mistakes along the way, that you're going to give up on him that quickly. When you only have one chance to do something, it's not like they give you 4 drafts in 1 year. You get 1 draft a year.
Right.
And I might miss 2 guys in that draft class. So I don't get another shot if I get another shot to do it and I hit on a guy, but the team's not that good, and you just fire me, that's why I think you got to give these guys 5 years to just let it kind of see how it happens. Like, now I get there's extenuating circumstances, like Joe Judge, that whole situation. To me, he had no track record to come in here to get 5 years to try to put his plan into shape. And if it's gone disastrous for the first 2 of those years, you have to really ask whether or not that team is going in the right direction.
You also have to look at a team. You mentioned the Giants. David Gettleman was supposed to come in there and fix things. He didn't fix them.
Yeah.
Right? So now you're going to fire your GM. So then now you're bringing a GM who didn't hire Joe Judge. That's creates a whole nother dynamic.
Well, that's a big problem. And then you have the whole situation in Jacksonville where they have Balky down there. And, he has had how many chances to try to do things down there? Now, he would say, well, I drafted Trevor Lawrence. This guy can play. Well, who hired the coach? Well, the owner did.
Well, the other thing with Balky is he actually did a solid job in San Francisco.
Well, he was just a jerk.
Right. Nobody liked him. It was Urban Meyer. Nobody likes him.
Part of what I think you guys are missing is we could have had both of them, Jefferson and Smith, just like the Cowboys have 3 really good wide receivers. No, I'm not missing that. I just don't think yeah, you're right. They could have had both guys. I don't think they would have taken both. I think they took Smith because they acknowledge a mistake with Rager.
Right.
And look, I think part of what my problem a lot of times is, and Roseman falls into this category as well, they make mistakes and they don't want to admit it. I think Rager drafting Smith at least showed that he admits, okay, we missed on Rager.
Right. He may not overtly say it, but actions speak louder than words.
Right, exactly. So to go back to that text message, I don't think if Jefferson was a success, if Rager was a success, I don't think they would have taken Smith. I don't think they wanted to spend 2 straight years of draft capital on that position, but Rager was such a monumental disaster that they had to go back because it's almost like, all right, we need to reset everything. We took Rager, and I think a lot of that had to do with Peterson. I think Peterson liked Rager.
The coaching staff wanted Rager. And by the way, when you're factoring in who they should or should have drafted, you have to keep in mind who's making the pick. Like, for example, we talked about some of the guys in the one draft with Jimmy Ward and Deion Buchanan. Well, another reason why they probably didn't draft those guys is because the Eagles have a history of not drafting safeties in the first round. They have a history of drafting linebackers in the first round. So, and you'll have Jeff Mosher on in less than an hour talking about the football at 4. He has talked about multiple times with you and with the Inside the Birds podcast the fact that this organization has a 20-year track record of not drafting certain players in the first round, period.
Positions.
Yeah. They don't draft them.
Mike, do you think now that Jalen Hurts has improved his value in the league, should the Eagles use that chip to try and sign or trade for Russ Rodgers? This is an interesting question. I've had a guy on Twitter coming after me nonstop about this, and I don't think that he really grasped what I'm saying.
Okay. Not surprising, but go ahead.
I tweeted out, I'm rolling with Hertz for another year over drafting a guy in this draft. I think this draft class just doesn't have a guy that I like. I don't think there's a player in this draft at quarterback that's better than Jalen Hurts. So I'll take Hertz for another year, add more talent, and then I'll figure out, if Hertz has improved. To me, the successful teams have patiently let their quarterback come to them. They haven't gone egregiously overdrafting a guy. If there's a guy that happens to be there that they like, fine. There's so many examples of this, and they all seem to be the good teams. Aaron Rodgers just fell to Green Bay. They didn't do anything crazy. He was there. They took him. You look at some of the other teams. Justin Herbert was taken, sixth or seventh?
He was the third quarterback.
Right. They took the quarterback that came to them, and they said, okay, that's the guy we're going to take. They didn't trade up to go get him. They didn't give away all this draft capital to take a guy. Look at the teams that have given up draft cap. The Chicago Bears are like, we have to have Mitch Trubisky. Well, they screwed that up.
How many times the Bears have traded up for a player? I mean, the Bears, they have Browns. All the quarterbacks.
Browns, that whole situation, too. Like, they had the number one overall pick in a year that had how many different quarterbacks in that draft class?
Baker, Darnold, Rosen, Allen, Jackson. Was that 5 in the first round?
And they all stunk. Right? I remember that year they took Baker, and everybody was like, oh, my God, because everybody thought Darnold might have been number one.
Sure.
There was a lot of possibilities for the number one pick. But the Bills are the example there. The Bills didn't do anything crazy. Was it Josh Allen? Okay, we'll take Josh Allen. The teams that just kind of patiently let the quarterbacks kind of fall into their places.
There's only one time you can name in recent years that a team traded up for the quarterback, and it was the right move. That was the Chiefs with Mahomes. That's it.
Yeah, but even that situation, what year was that? That was the year that the draft was in Philadelphia.
2017, right?
2017. Even that situation, though, Trubisky, someone traded up to go get him. Mahomes, Deshaun Watson was the 12th pick that year. These quarterbacks, I'm talking about teams that the Eagles have 3 picks. And people are talking about using these draft picks to go get one of these quarterbacks. Like Mahomes, if you liked Mahomes, it wasn't like Kansas City went and did something crazy to go up to the number 1 or 2 spot to go get Mahomes. He was at number 10. And they were like, okay, the guy we like's at number 10. Let's go get him, right? Because he fell. He fell to a spot that they felt comfortable getting him at.
Right. They thought it was in range of, reasonability.
What did they give up that year? Buffalo and Kansas City traded. Buffalo traded a first-round pick to Kansas City in exchange for Kansas City's first and third, as well as a first-rounder in 2018. So they flip-flop spots, it looks like.
And they got another first-round pick the next year.
Right, exactly. So Buffalo went from 10 to 7. They moved up 3. No, because Allen was the next year. Buffalo went backwards. Where did Buffalo go to? Where did Kansas City come up from?
I'm pulling it up now. Give me a sec.
Oh, they went from 27 to 10.
That sounds about right.
That's a pretty big jump for what they gave up.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't give up a whole heck of a lot to go from 27 to 10. They got Kansas City's first and third round pick and then a first rounder the next year. They gave up 1 first rounder and a third rounder. They flip-flop spots, got a third and a first.
Yeah. With the 27th pick, they got Tre'Davious White, and then they traded the pick the next year to Buffalo. So they even used the 2018 pick.
Crazy. Mike, can you imagine Jefferson, Smith, Goddard lining up together? How long was the number 1 running attack? Now there's an offer. I don't know what that means.
I'm confused.
Can I imagine Jefferson, Smith, and Goddard? They'd be very good, the three of them together. I mean, Jefferson and Smith, I think, complement each other very well.
Yeah, I think they would play very well together.
How long was the number one running attack? What does that mean?
Is he trying to say that how long will we have a number one running attack if we had those receivers to throw to? Is he maybe suggesting that we wouldn't have to run the ball as much if we had those receivers?
Maybe. I mean, he's right. I mean, if they had those three guys, no, you're probably not running the ball all that much. Glenn from EHT hits us up on the text board. He says, could the Eagles use the draft picks they have and include Hertz to get Deshaun Watson? I know Watson's future is up in the air, but he's going to end up on somebody's team. Absolutely, they could.
Problem is Watson has a no trade clause, and
That's a good point.
He has said he doesn't want to come to Philly so far.
That's a good point. He is.
So does Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers and all these guys. So
yeah, the trade market for quarterbacks is going to be kind of interesting this offseason. You're starting to hear a lot of craziness. I mean, they're talking about Russell Wilson. Could he go to the Giants? Aaron Rodgers, could he go to Pittsburgh? Could he go to Denver?
Right.
Derek Carr, like that second tier group of guys. Do the Vikings try to move on from Kirk Cousins? Like all that kind of stuff. You're going to hear craziness. That secondary quarterback trade market has turned into a new thing now where these teams are just Baker Mayfield. No, I don't want Baker Mayfield on my team, but I would imagine he's going to be done in Cleveland.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk that they could trade him because he's in the final year of his deal and they could go out and get another quarterback. The question is, who do you bring in? Because they brought the stat up on, I forget what show I was watching late last night, but they said, here's Baker Mayfield stats versus every other Browns first round pick in the last 20 years. And his numbers blow them away.
Yeah.
So the fact that Baker Mayfield is the best quarterback they've had in 20 years, and you're talking about trading him away, oof.
Now the question the guy asked regarding using the picks, they could use draft picks to trade for a veteran quarterback.
Sure.
That I would be okay with.
It depends on the quarterback.
Right. And now the whole Watson thing is murky.
Right.
Russell Wilson, I think I'd be okay with Russell Wilson.
The Eagles would love that because that's the guy they wanted years ago anyway.
Right. Aaron Rodgers, obviously.
Right. No, there's nobody saying no to Aaron Rodgers.
I mean, he is almost 40.
Yeah, but I mean, for a couple of years, he's still going to be able to.
You would think. I'm just saying, but are you trading draft capital?
Well, that's the other problem. For example, if you traded for Aaron Rodgers, would you keep Jalen Hertz knowing he's only a couple more years left?
Oh, apparently Schefter said this morning that Hertz has now built up enough value that teams are going to want him in the trade.
Well, that goes back to what Rob Motti was saying last week on Twitter, that he's talked to GMs. They're like, look, if Philly doesn't want Hertz, I'll take him.
Exactly. That Hertz is at the point now because he's inexpensive. This is what another thing that plays into a role here. You're not paying Hertz anything, so you can build the team around him and then get to the point where you have the cap space to be able to be a player for a quarterback if you want one. That's another reason why I say I'm sticking with Hertz on the rookie deal for as long as I can. You know what I mean? All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. Coming up, Mosher football at 4, Fine 5, Ugly 5. We'll continue the quarterback conversation because I think there's a lot of interesting things in play here. 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. That's the text board. I encourage you to continue to hit us up on the text board. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash being brought to you by DraftKings Sportsbook inside Resorts Casino Hotel in Atlantic City. Don't forget, you can watch the show live streaming on our YouTube channel on your smart TV. Just launch the YouTube app and search 97.3 ESPN. 3:30. I enjoy the conversation. It's been very good today. Back and forth. 609-403-0973. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app, live video. Just launch the YouTube app on your phone or your smart TV, and you can watch us there each and every day. We broadcast the show live on the 97.3 ESPN YouTube channel. If you can't tell, I'm a little stuffed up today. My throat, my voice is a little shot. I don't know what the hell's going on with me. I was hot. I was cold. I was sweating. Now I'm not. Now I feel okay. It's been bizarre, man. My temperature's fine. I'm tested negative.
Mike, ever since you dug the snow with your hands on Monday, that was the trigger.
I had to do it twice. My car got stuck twice.
Yeah. So ever since you did that, that was
well, the second time, I said, I'm not even digging my car out. I'm just leaving it here. I just left it in the middle of the street. I said, well, they didn't plow the street. No one else is coming down this street, so I'm just leaving the car there.
Either way, that was Monday. Ever since then, that's when everything happened. So blame the snow.
Am I allergic to snow? Is that what it is?
I guess you're allergic to snow on your hands.
Snow on my hands. All right. 609-403-0973. Mike, the only veteran quarterback I would trade the picks for is Wilson. That's an interesting question. Which of the veteran quarterbacks that could be traded would you be interested in?
Well, Wilson is younger than Rodgers, so you have to factor that in.
I'm a big Wilson fan.
I love Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
Loved him in college.
Let's see. Arizona's not trading Murray. I don't want Matt Ryan. What's going on with this Lamar Jackson's contract down there? Is he like up for a contract?
He's up for a contract, but they're working on re-upping him.
So, I mean, he's not even somebody that I would really like say I would want.
He's not moving.
Allen's not moving. I don't want anybody in Carolina. I don't want anybody in Chicago
or Washington.
Burrow's not going anywhere. I don't want Mayfield. Dak's not going anywhere.
You don't want Jimmy G.
Don't skip over the teams here. All right, dude. Jimmy G. Yeah, that's exactly who I want. Like you stated, the most obvious guy that you don't want. Denver doesn't have a quarterback I want. Detroit's going to get rid of Goff. I'm not interested there. Green Bay, Rodgers. Okay, I would be interested in Rodgers. What am I giving up to get Rodgers? Am I giving up all 3 first-round picks? That's a tough, steep hill to climb. I worked this hard to get 3 first-round picks, which could set me up for 10 years. And I'm going to trade for a guy that might only be there for 3 years.
Or even 2.
Right, exactly. It's a tough decision to make, to give up 3 picks for a guy that might only give you 2 seasons. I don't know that I do that.
No, that doesn't sound like the best decision. If they make that move and you trade for Rodgers,
you better win a Super Bowl in one of the 2 years. I mean,
yeah,
obviously that's an obvious statement. But if you don't win a Super Bowl, if you trade 3 first-round picks to get Rodgers and you don't end up winning a Super Bowl, now keep in mind, Rodgers was drafted in what year? 05?
Yes.
He has won 1 Super Bowl.
One. He's only been the one, too.
And I'm not knocking Rodgers. It's not that Rodgers stinks. I'm just saying, you have a 2-year window possibly to win a Super Bowl with him. He's won 1 in his 17 years in the league.
That's it.
That's it. So you're going to give up 3 first-round picks to try to win a Super Bowl with a guy in basically a 2-year window who's won 1 Super Bowl in a 17-year window. That's a tough pill to swallow there, man.
It's a tough sell. I think that you have to factor in these guys' ages and their trajectories as well. And that's why, for me, of the guys you've named so far, Wilson is the guy I'd be willing to consider making that move for.
All right, so you got. Well, I'm going down the list of the teams in alphabetical order.
You said Green Bay.
Have you caught my pattern yet?
No, I have. Yes.
All right. Green Bay is so far the only guy on this list that's movable, you think, is Green Bay. Then Houston, Watson. Big problem with Watson. What am I giving up? What's the whole legal situation? Very murky. Can't really answer that. Don't know what the legal situation. If he is completely absolved, then I have to be in play.
Problem is he has no trade clause. Will
That's
he
a
come
problem.
here?
Correct. So I would think that 3 picks for Rodgers is not a slam dunk for me. Him waiving his no trade clause for Watson, I don't think that's a slam dunk either.
No.
I don't want Wentz. They're not trading Trevor Lawrence. They're not trading Mahomes. Derek Carr, any interest?
I would be interested, but not for 3 first-round picks.
No, I'm not giving any first-round pick up for Derek Carr.
I would consider a second-round pick.
Is Derek Carr that big of an upgrade over what you have to give up capital?
I don't personally think so.
Right. I'm not interested in Carr.
I like him, but I don't like him that much more.
Certainly
than
not
Hertz.
for my draft capital that I have built. I have worked so hard to build.
Like you said, you can set yourself up for 10 years right now. You can literally reform your entire
What do you know
roster.
about next year's draft quarterback class?
Well, according to Todd McShay, he says it's a better class
This year's not very good.
because the next year's class, the top of the list is Bryce Young from Alabama.
Okay.
So, obviously he's going to be.
Bryce Young is not in this class, obviously.
The next
He's
year.
not. Is he next year or the
2023.
following year?
2023.
Okay, so he's in next year's class.
Yes.
That's what I
keep,
asked
I keep
originally.
forgetting we're in 2022.
Yeah. So he's not in this year's draft. He's in next year's draft.
Right.
Right. So how's that class?
Tom McShay says it's better than the
Is
current
it
class.
better because the top guy's that much better?
Well, that's the problem. Is it better because of that, or is it better because you also have guys staying in college? Some of the guys who could have come out this year are staying.
Who are they?
Like Keaton Slovis is staying. He's transferring.
Get a lot of those transfers.
Yeah, it's going to be a transfer dumpster fire. Also, if Dylan Gabriel has a good year at Oklahoma, he could be a first-round pick. He's transferred to Oklahoma now, for those who didn't know.
Well, the Oklahoma guy's transferring.
The Oklahoma guy, Caleb Williams, is
Well,
transferring.
2 Oklahoma guys have transferred.
Right. Shane Rattler went to reunite with Shane Beamer in South Carolina.
Yeah.
And Caleb Williams is currently a free agent.
Chargers, Herbert's not getting moved. The Rams, they're not trading Stafford. Not that I'm interested. Miami, Tua. You have any interest in Tua?
I have no interest in Tua.
I was down on Tua, and I don't think he's great, but he certainly has played better. And then he kind of fell off a little bit. I don't have interest in Tua either. I've been kind of down on Tua. People tank for Tua. I was not on that Tua train. He did play well for a stretch there.
He's not a bad quarterback. It's just that I don't like the injury issues that keep cropping up every single year.
Yeah, well, that was part of the reason why I didn't. That's part of the reason why I wouldn't have tanked for Tua back when that whole thing is.
Also,
I put out a tweet last night that I got a ton of people railing on me for.
Oh, yeah?
Well, I just said, I'm watching John Morant last night. That dude's the real deal.
I love John Morant.
And I said, if you recall, you were here, I was not a Zion guy. And I said, could you imagine if the New Orleans Pelicans had the stones to take the right player? They just couldn't. You had a Duke guy against a Murray State guy. You had Zion mania. And I said at the time, Zion was never going to live up to the hype. He's a terrific player and talent, but he's not the kind of player, and I maintain this, and I said it then, and I'm saying it still. Zion is not the type of player that takes you from being the worst team to a championship team. They can't even make the playoffs with him.
John Morant got his team to the point where they can make the playoffs.
They're not to the point where they make the playoffs. They're in the top 4 seed in the West.
But I mean, even before this year.
That's what I'm saying.
They were contending.
And Zion can't even stay on the court. That was part of my point. And that was me with Tua. Zion, I thought, was going to have problems figuring out what positions he's going to play, health. Same with Tua. Just too small, yada, yada. Minnesota, I don't want Cousins. I'm not interested in Cousins because he's probably going to be available. Mac Jones is not getting traded. New Orleans has nothing I'm interested in. I don't want Daniel Jones. I'm not interested in Zach Wilson. Pittsburgh needs a quarterback. They're not getting rid of one. San Francisco, I don't want Jimmy G. Russell Wilson. Okay, what am I giving up for Russell Wilson?
I mean,
see, the question is, would you trade Hertz and a first-round pick for Wilson?
I mean, I certainly have to consider it. It's my problem with Russell Wilson is I want to know more about the medical because
he broke his finger. or something like that.
Yeah, well, he had surgery on his hand. There's a lot of speculation. He came back too early. I want to know that he's fully cleared medically. I need a little more information. But I mean, if everything is equal and everything is okay, I think you have to strongly consider that.
He's 33 years old. He had 22 touchdowns, 5 interceptions in 13 games. He had 102 quarterback rating, and you would say this is one of the worst years he's had.
Correct.
Yeah, I think I'm rolling with Russell Wilson if I have the shot.
Yeah, if everything's
No,
fine.
I could. Well, what if I said, like, Russell Wilson was a 3rd-round pick?
Yes.
He's 5'11", 215 pounds.
He's actually smaller than Jalen Hurts.
Right. I was going to say, he's very much like a Hertz, but Hertz is actually bigger than Russell Wilson.
Yeah, he's a couple inches taller. He's about 12, 15 pounds heavier.
Yeah, Hertz is 6'1", 223.
So probably more than 223, honestly.
And then you got Wilson at 5'11", 215. They're comparable size-wise, but Hertz is bigger than Wilson is. So the point I'm making is Wilson was a 3rd-round pick, and he has turned into a franchise Super Bowl winning guy. I don't think anybody thought that of him when he got drafted. Could Hertz essentially be Russell Wilson 10 years later?
Right. Is this a situation where it's like when the Phillies traded Scott Rowland away, and then you watch Rowland go out and have this amazing career everywhere else, but with you?
Well, he was decent with the Phillies. The problem was he didn't want to be here.
No, but part of that was because of
That's not a good example, I don't think.
Well, I'm just saying, do you want to trade a guy
You could do
away?
better.
Probably. My point is that do you want to trade a guy away and see him be successful somewhere else?
I think more of the rub on that is, do you already have Russell Wilson? Do you already have the next generation? Russell Wilson's been in the league he got drafted in 2012.
Right.
So the question is, do you have the next generation's Russell Wilson right on your team already?
That's the Eagles' theory. When they drafted him, the theory was that we couldn't pass up another Russell Wilson.
So why would I trade a younger version of Russell Wilson plus a 1st-round pick just to get back Russell Wilson?
Because you're probably listening to the fans who are telling you that.
Well, I mean, would you make that trade?
Honestly, I don't think so.
Sports Bash brought to you by DraftKings Sportsbook, Inside Resorts Casino Hotel in Atlantic City. Hey, I think I'm back at Chickies and Pete's tomorrow, by the way.
Are you
I
really?
just found that out. Yeah, they just re-upped to have me back out there for the rest of the Eagle season.
Yeah, less than 24 hours notice. Good job.
They told me yesterday.
Okay. I thought it'd be funny.
Well, last night. I got a text last night. They asked me if I was available.
If you were available.
Where else would I be Thursday? If I feel like I do right now, though, I don't know that I'm making it. I don't feel bad. I just I'm like a menopause. I'm like hot, cold, I'm sweating, I'm freezing. Now I'm feeling like, but my voice is shot, right? My voice sounds shot, doesn't it?
Your voice is choppy.
Billy Schweim's not hosting the show. I'm
No. That is not Billy Schweim move there. Not at all. There's a lot of differences.
All right, I got more texts coming in. It's been a fun show so far. I like these kind of like hypothetical things, make you think back and forth. The Hertz and a pick for Russell Wilson. I think it's interesting because I guess the question, did you see, I tweeted this out. It's on my Twitter at Mike Gill Show. What Orlovsky said about, he does the film breakdown of Hertz. Hertz has turned into his new Wentz almost.
Yeah.
He is really breaking down his film and saying, look, if you're not seeing the progress this guy has making, then you're not paying attention. So go at Mike Gill Show. You can check that out. More Sports Bash on the way. All right, we're taking it till 6 tonight. This is the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. Whatever happened to Jamiroquai? Just kind of came and went. That's it. Does he do anything else now? Has anybody heard from Jamiroquai since?
I have to look it up. I have no idea.
Those things always amaze me. When you are that prominent for such a short amount of time, what is your life like now? Like, you go to the Wawa and get a sandwich and people are like, hey, there's Jamiroquai. Or do they just, like, forget that you were a somebody back then? What is your income? Do you not need any income? Were you so big for such a short amount of time that you no longer need income? Right?
So, according to Wikipedia,
A lot of these guys go behind the scenes is what happens.
as of 2017, Jamiroquai has sold more than 26 million albums.
So then he doesn't need a
worldwide.
job.
In theory, yes.
I mean, 26 million albums, you don't need a job. But seriously, okay, you don't have a job. What is your day-to-day like? You just out on the boat, fishing, drinking, partying?
Are you making more music?
I haven't heard it. That's what I'm saying. I haven't heard anything from Jamiroquai.
It looks like the last era of his music was 2001 to 2016, a funk odyssey rock dust light star.
Well, sometimes these guys just do like little LPs or, they make music on their own, but what's their income? I guess you sell 27 million albums. You don't need any income.
Jamiroquai in 2017 released an album called Automation through Virgin EMI. It was their 8th studio album and first in 7 years. It reached number 4 on the UK charts.
Huh.
So I guess he's doing well in UK.
That happens too. Like David Hasselhoff is big in Germany.
Oh, yeah, he's massive. He's like a super legendary superstar.
Cole in LBI text in. Sorry, I'm really stuffy right now. I'm doing my best.
By the way, Jamiroquai is very big on their new album using the didgeridoo.
I don't know what that means.
It's an instrument.
A didgeridoo?
Yeah.
Never heard of that.
You ever heard of a didgeridoo?
I just said that. I think I was pretty clear. You're like one of my Twitter followers. The guy tweets at me last night. What do you even mean? I said, I think I was pretty clear. And then I had other people that are like, I think he was pretty clear.
The album.
I said, you know what I said? I said, they changed the rules for Zion. What does that even mean? Well, they added playoff. They tried to add. They tried
to squeeze him in the playoffs.
They added the
play-in.
The play-in game that year because they wanted Zion to try to get into the damn playoffs.
And he still couldn't get in.
He still couldn't get in. Cole in LBI says, Happy New Year's, guys. I agree with you, Mike. I would stay with Hertz on his rookie deal. The only issue is you probably only have that for one more year. If he plays well next year, then he's going into the 4th year being extremely underpaid. If he gets to the point, his agent will probably tell him to hold out until he signs a long-term extension. No matter what happens with the O-line and the draft capital, the Eagles have a chance to start a dynasty where they should be Super Bowl contending team for a long time. See, the Hertz rookie deal is a big factor here because you can do a lot like Seattle did. You can really, with this draft, with 3 first-round picks, and then last year with Smith and Landon Dickerson and what you just did with Goddard, you have this core group of young guys now that you can build while Hertz is on the rookie deal and then figure out what you want to do with Hertz like 2 years down the road. The question would be, is the team going to be ready to win a Super Bowl in the next 2 seasons, like next year and the year after? And it's Hertz. You say, man, we have a Super Bowl roster, but Hertz is just okay.
Well, that's the thing. I think you need to find out what his development is. This is the 4th different offense he has been in 40 years. What happens when Jalen Hurts is in the same offense for 2 years? Does he have massive progression? Does he stagnate? I want to know. I want to see what happens.
Robin Margate says, Mike, I love the show. Rob, that's very nice of you to say. I like you. I'm a big Russell Wilson fan, he says. When he came into the league, he was a game manager. That turned into an elite franchise player. Not saying Hertz will turn into Wilson, but he can develop into a top 10 player in this league. See, Rob, I'm intrigued by, is Hertz this generation's Wilson? The under-the-radar guy on draft day that just kept winning, that just kept getting better and just was like, counted out. He's been counted out everywhere, and all he does is win. This text message is too long for me to squeeze in. I think my voice is deteriorating as the seconds clock down.
Well,
tick
really
off.
quick, the lead singer of Jamiroquai, his name is JK.
Yeah,
Apparently,
JK.
he has a car collection that rivals Jay Leno,
Oh, wow.
and he's trying to have more cars than Jay Leno.
So that's what you do with your life when you're done performing. You just buy cars.
He has hundreds of cars currently in his
Wow.
collection.
How do you choose which one you want to drive each day? All right, football at 4. Jeff Mosher enters our conversation on the NFL, the Eagles' future, quarterbacks, and more coming up next. Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by Caesars Entertainment Group of Atlantic City. Come experience the ultimate sports destinations all season long. Wild Wild West, Tropicana, Harrah's Resort, Atlantic City. Book your game day experience right now at Caesars.com. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Jeff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast set to join us here in just a second. We've had a lot of good football conversation, quarterbacks, Howie Roseman's come up a bunch today. The text messages continuing to pour in. The video messages have been coming in all day long. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. You can keep your text messages coming in over there. There's Jeff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast, which drops this morning. You can check that out. They talk a lot about Jalen Hertz, which we've done a lot in the 3 o'clock hour. Jeff Mosher, good afternoon, my friend.
How are you feeling today, Mike?
It's very up and down. I mean, I was cold. I was hot. I feel like I'm losing my voice. I think that's apparent.
Yes, that is apparent. You sound a little hoarse, a little bit hoarse. Now, is your back hurting?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay. Yeah,
Why,
I feel like listening to you today, you're kind of carrying the weight of the Eagles and Howie Roseman on your back.
I got you.
Can I just say one thing really quickly?
Yeah, sure.
Because I've been listening to you and I see your Twitter account. Love what you do. You're great. I'm not saying that just so I can diss you, by the way. I'm just pointing something out here.
I feel like here comes the butt.
Yeah, like have you ever seen this is old, but did you ever see the episode of Crossfire? Remember the old show Crossfire where Tucker Carlson would represent the right and some guy, Chris something, represented the left, and they would fight over whatever political argument was going on? I don't watch that show either.
I'm not familiar, no.
The only time I've seen it is a great video clip on YouTube of Jon Stewart appearing on the show.
Okay.
As kind of they thought he was going to be funny and comedian. And what he does on the show, Mike, is brilliant. He looks at both guys and says, "Would you guys please stop? You are hurting America with what you're doing." And they're like, "What? What are you talking about?" And he's like, "You're just so hyper partisan, and you're not even having productive dialogue." And
that's what I'm trying to do. That's what I'm trying to do.
Like you think you're being objective, but you're just gone. The fans that you're addressing are Fox News and you're NBC. Like, I don't think you're seeing the middle ground the way you like to normally think you are. I just heard the draft talk you were having a couple hours ago about they missed on Marcus Smith, but who else was there? It's like there wasn't a lot of people there. And I'm like, I know Bradley Roby and Jimmy Ward are like still playing in the NFL right now. They've both been to Super Bowls. One was a starter on the Super Bowl Broncos. Like, come and your comment, I remember being like, they're like, well, I mean,
no. No, those are I said Marcus Smith, a bad miss. But the tweet that I brought up was the guy said they haven't been able to get an impact defensive player in 10 years. Those guys aren't impact defensive players. They're solid players, but they're very
you're
much
a starter on a Super Bowl team that either wins or loses like Jimmy Ward's did. I think you're an impact player. I mean, you don't have to be a Pro Bowl player to be an
all right. Well, then that
player.
means that Derek Barnett's an impact player.
He was. He helped them win a Super Bowl. I don't think Derek Barnett is a bad pick. He just has not been what everybody,
No, but that's what I said. I said Barnett is not what you envision. Like, you want the best of the best when you take a guy. But I can't, as much as I don't like Barnett, objectively, he's been a starting player on a playoff team for 4 or 5 years. I can't say that they missed on him. He's just not as impactful as you would like. The tweet that I'm referring to was that they have not got a defensive impact player in Roseman's entire time. And my point was, Jimmy Ward would be a starting player, but you're not building your defense around him.
Well, but when you're picking in the bottom of the first round, you're really only looking for a starter. So to pick Marcus Smith over, then there were several guys.
Totally horrible.
Draft. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. I'm not disagreeing with that.
I just felt you were a little dismissive of like, none of these guys really would have been any better. Like, no, that's not true. There were
no. What I was saying, none of those guys would have been the impactful player that the gentleman who tweeted at me suggests. How could you draft for 10 years and not one time get a defensive impactful player? And I said, over that 10-year span that he has drafted, keep in mind, They drafted Fletcher Cox, who was a
That is
Pro Bowl
definitely an
player.
impactful player. Correct.
Right, exactly. And then they took Lane Johnson, who was an impactful player, but on the offensive side of the ball.
Right.
They had the number 2 pick and took Wentz, which led them to not having a pick later on down the road. So I said, you got to look at the context of, okay, they haven't drafted an impactful player. Fair. But what was available to them when they were picking? You don't always have a chance to get an impactful player when it's your turn to pick. That was my point.
That's fair. In that case, in that year, they did. They just didn't take one. I mean, they took a really – and the biggest issue with that is that – all right, take Jalen Reagor, for example. He has not been a good pick, and it doesn't look good, right? But if you would have asked, like, 30 personnel people going into the draft, should Jalen Reagor be drafted somewhere late first round? Is that too much of a reach? They'll tell you, no, he's late first, early second, because by the time you get to the bottom of the first, most teams don't have 32 first-round picks. They've got like 15 or 16. So after you get through the first 18, like you could literally justify taking anybody in your top 50 at that point if they fit your culture and scheme.
Yeah.
So that was the pick itself made sense as far as the talent toward the value. Whereas Marcus Smith, our homework was like third round pick at best, fourth, fifth.
That
kind of like
adds
the
to it.
JJ Arcega-Whiteside thing, where very few people had him as a second round pick.
Yeah, the Smith adds to it is that he was not a projected first round player at all, and you take him over guys who were available that would have been starting players for you, presumably.
Like at very least trade down or trade back or something, or trade up because that draft was wealthier at the top 12 to 14, I believe.
Yeah. Now, like I was talking earlier, that the team has been in the playoffs however many times, only 4 teams more. They've won more playoff games. What role does Roseman have in the success of this long-term success that this franchise has? Like, do we minimize it? Do we say, I was pretty shocked.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was pretty shocked. Rube tweeted these out that there's only 3 teams, I think, that have more playoff wins since Lurie has owned the team.
Now, yes, but Howie Roseman has not been the GM, obviously, since Lurie owned the team. That's more of you have to look at the last 10 years for Howie, right, than the entire – if you're talking about who deserves credit. Then
right.
Yeah.
Well, that's another part of this is like he was the GM, but he wasn't in charge of personnel because Andy was here and Andy was making the picks, and then they kind of crossed over for a little bit. And then the murkiness of when Chip got here, and there's a lot of unknown of what he was the GM, but he really wasn't running the draft for a while there, right?
Yeah, because Andy was executive vice president of football operations, so he technically had the final say. I kind of tend to look at the Howie Roseman era beginning with Chip Kelly's first year, and then up until now. But then you take away Chip Kelly's third year, because then he was not even GM, right? He was just, in charge of the medical department or whatever that wonderful press release was. So that's how I would normally.
Well, what about the year and Andy's last year? They kind of had that big press conference where Jeffrey was like, we used to go off of this draft board, and Howie had his own draft board, but we went off of this one, but now we're going to kind of go more off of Howie's draft board. Remember that whole situation?
I do. So that would be what, 2011 or 2012?
11, 12, somewhere in that range. When they
said, look, I remember
Andy's been running the draft, and we've been going off of his board, but Howie has his own board. And now we're going to.
At the time, they were trying to reduce, they had a couple of drafts. And they were trying to kind of take the responsibility away from Andy. It's really hard. Again, you should never judge a GM by one specific pick or one specific draft, but it is hard, and that's why I kind of like to keep it from 2000 and Chip Kelly's first year, 2013 till now, and then just eliminate 2015 because he wasn't in charge at that point. But if you want to throw 12 and 13 in there, that's fine. It can be part of the conversation. It's probably not going to sway you one way or another. There were some.
Well, I think The problem is you go all the way back to 12, which was Fletcher Cox. People are kind of that draft has lost the shine of if you're saying, hey, I made some good picks in 2012, the people would say, well, that was 2012. What have you done for me lately? The problem is I feel like, I was talking about this earlier, you've got to give anybody who gets hired as a GM, I think in today's world, you got to give them almost 5 years to put their thing together to see how these players playing out. You know what I'm saying? And like, so I think that Roseman had
real quick. I think we shouldn't count 2012 because now that I look, that's the year they drafted Nick Foles, and that Andy Reid said, "Look, we didn't get Russell Wilson. We're taking Nick Foles here." Right? Andy, his power and his clout was still so great that if Andy said, "I bang my hand on the table," I'm picking that guy. And of course, they had Washburn that year, so that was like collectively, we need a guy who fits our wide nine, and Fletcher did.
Yeah.
So again, I really think it's for Howie's sake. You probably start with the beginning of the Chip Kelly. But go ahead, you were saying.
Well, like, so I feel like they had some. Now they make the trade for Wentz, okay, and that affected a lot of their drafts because they only ended up with 5 picks in the 2 draft classes following. They had 10 picks over 2 years, one of which they had no first-round pick and no third-round pick.
Correct.
And I think they really, after the Super Bowl, not having the picks in those classes, I think hurt their roster the last couple of seasons.
Yes.
And then they came out and said, look, we felt like we were close, so we did a couple things we normally wouldn't do.
Right.
They kind of went off character because they felt like we were right there to win another Super Bowl.
Do you give them? Do you accept that as a rationale? As I understand that, or do you think that abandoning your character is a bad idea when sticking to a certain principle got you to where you are?
It's a fair question.
That's all I'm trying to do is bring both sides of the argument.
I agree. I think if the organization as a whole comes together and say, "Look, we're right there. We just won a Super Bowl. Or do we have another window? Do we just go for it?" I don't have a problem with that. That's what I'm saying. It might have been the wrong decision, but I don't have a problem with saying we think we're right there. Let's go for it.
Okay.
Is that fair?
But I say that if you're wrong with your decision, you should be judged for it because I think the best organizations say we know how to build a team. We stick to our principles. We don't overreact one way or the other.
100%. But I would also say if we all come together and make that decision and we wrong, it should not also be a fireable offense.
That's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. Because you're right. As an organizational decision, of course. Absolutely.
Right. Like the organization, Jeffrey Lurie could have said, no. You know, let's keep the course that we've done for 20 years and go down that road. I think they all collectively, Doug included, right, said, we're right there. Let's go for it. Let's go get Deshaun Jackson. Let's go bring Jason Pete. Let's go for this one more time.
Yeah. I mean, look, Doug has, so it's hard because Doug has lately said in interviews that he wishes he was more outspoken at times, and he wishes that he had not been afraid to, or not afraid. I don't think he said afraid, but he just wishes he had expressed his opinion. I know he said in his latest, I forget where it was, it made a lot of headlines, but he said if in his next job that he takes, that's going to be important to him to make sure it's all collaborative and not just said to be collaborative. And that part of it is a big part of sort of what makes the Eagles in that they tend to build up and then have fantastic collapses because of the collaboration issues that we have seen over different generations there.
Yeah. And then another thing that I mentioned is like, it's not like you get 4 drafts a year. You get 1 draft. You might not do a good job in that particular draft, which, I mean, you know, but then like in 2018, they've done a really good job. 4 out of their 5 picks have all been starting players. Goddard, Sweat, Maddox, Mailata.
Sure.
So does that get judged heavier?
I do say, you know, starting players for what? For a 9-7 team or a Super Bowl contender? Now, I'm not trying to downplay. These are good players. You're right. They're good players, but sometimes
I think Goddard and Mailata and Maddox probably start on just about every team. Sweat too.
Certainly Goddard and Mailata are going to start for most teams. Probably Sweat, although he might be situational. Either way, they're playing for most teams. There's no doubt about it. But I do hear that often about, 11 of these starters came from the draft. I'm like, well, all right. Well, over the last two years, you got 13 wins. So, I
Yeah.
mean, what are we talking about here? But go ahead.
So obviously, it's just weird to me. This is my point, I guess, is it's weird to me that a team that has had so much success. Now, the level of success, they won the Super Bowl 4 years ago. Now, if you expected them to win the Super Bowl every year after that, then I can understand being disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
They made the playoffs 3 out of 4 times. Now, what's playoffs? 9 and 7. Okay, that's disappointing. The fact, though, that they are this consistent, I think, is, to me, very odd that a team that has this much consistency, Kevin Colbert, Pittsburgh, they've never had a losing season in the whole time they're out there. I don't think anybody's ever calling for Kevin Colbert to be fired, right?
Well, no, but like you said, it's not just that they're making the playoffs. I mean, most years, give or take, and like this year is an exception, most years they're Super Bowl contenders. There's a difference between making the playoffs and being a legit Super Bowl contender. And now even more so that the 7th seed has been put in. But Mike, to your point, to counter it a little bit, and I was surprised. I did this research the other day just because I was curious, right? How many teams since 2018 to now, how many teams in the NFC do you think have made the playoffs?
Have made the playoff field since when?
Yeah, since 2018 to now.
I mean, of the how many of the
16 NFC teams?
Yeah. 8.
12.
12 of the 16 teams have made the playoffs since 2018.
Right. And so not all of them, as we know, have been Super Bowl contenders. The Bears made it last year. The Vikings made it last year, won a game. Washington made it last year. So my point is, to make the playoffs, especially now with the 7th seed, it's not a sign that you're that much better than the rest of the league. I would say now, I think playoff wins and are you a legit Super Bowl contender should probably be the measuring stick. And again, a lot of this year, Mike, for fans, right, is all about what your expectation was for this team after winning the Super Bowl. When you win the Super Bowl because you drafted a quarterback really high in the first round and you experience that success, even though he didn't win the game, but then you sign that guy to a long contract, you expect to be a Super Bowl contender for a decent amount of time. You want to be like the Packers with Aaron or Big Ben to the Steelers or Russell Wilson with the Seahawks. And 3 years later, you were rock bottom. Like you bottomed out. And that was not just a happenstance thing. That happened because of a lot of things that went on with the coaching staff, the front office, ownership that don't happen in 31 cities. You know what I'm saying? So if you're,
how many cities?
How many cities? Fan. Go ahead.
How many cities? Go ahead.
Like, while I do think fans, as you're mentioning, can tend to be weird, like give nobody the credit they deserve. I think that they feel like, why are we in a rebuilding? It's great that we made the playoffs in a rebuilding year. Why are we rebuilding again 3 years after we thought we had a franchise quarterback and a franchise trending in the direction of being competitive for the Super Bowl every year? They really haven't. 2018, they were certainly competitive as Super Bowl contenders. They were not in 2019, certainly not in 2020, and not this year. And who knows about next year?
Yeah, it was odd because they have the 4th most playoff wins in Lurie's tenure, which I was kind of surprised by because the teams in front of them were the Patriots, Brady,
right,
Green Bay, Favre, then Rodgers, and the Colts, who had Manning, then Luck.
Right.
The Eagles haven't been afforded that situation where they've had this quarterback situation in a 25-year span where you're like, I can see why. They just had this constant stability. They had a tremendous run with McNabb, obviously, so that shows how big that is. But the whole Wentz situation, I think, has really, really bottomed out last year. But for them to be where they are now and then set up to kind of take off, I feel like they really got themselves out of disarray. Like, people are like, well, if he got out of this mess, well, he created the mess. Well, yeah, like, things happen. You make mistakes. I feel like everybody wants perfection. That's all.
Well, I definitely agree with you with that. I think there's like two types of people thinking on this. There's the I can't control. I'm a fan of the team. I work for a living. I don't have time to get into all the drama and stuff. I just want to see a good football, right? And so I can easily move past whatever happened in the past and just enjoy the moment and
Yeah.
hope that they're leading up. And then I think there's the older fan who's kind of been around and seen a lot of crap happen throughout the years and say, am I just being set up for like the nice honeymoon phase here so that in 3 years, this front office or coaching staff or whatever dysfunction happens is just going to tear it all apart again? And I think that's just as fair to think that way because the history has shown you it's been that way. I mean, all of the success, the playoff wins, right? Yes, there's the Super Bowl season, but that long extended period of time was really Andy Reid era. And as you see, he's doing that now in Kansas City, and the Eagles are up, down, up, down. Yes, they won their Super Bowl.
Yeah.
3 years later, 4 wins. You're not seeing that in Kansas City.
Well, right. And other than the Patriots, there are a handful, 2 or 3 franchises that have 2 Super Bowl wins, but most over the last 20, 25 years have 1. So it's not like you're so far off the pace car here with your
Right.
1 and being the point of, okay, but your point is valid. You made the playoffs, but are you a true Super Bowl contender? That's
Right.
a fair comment. But most, like I was saying earlier, would you trade 3 picks if Aaron Rodgers says, I want to go to Philly? I love what they're doing there. They have this great offensive line. They got a great young receiver. I want to be there. Okay, we want 3 picks. I said, you're trading 3 first-round picks for Aaron Rodgers. He's had 17 chances to win a Super Bowl, and he's only won 1.
Mm-hmm.
He might only play for you for 2 more years. He's had a 17-year window. He's won 1. You might only get a 2-year window. He better win 1 in that 2 years. Otherwise, you just gave up 3 picks. You know, that's like just getting Aaron Rodgers. He's won 1 Super Bowl in 17 years. Are you giving up 3 picks to get him?
I am. I really am. Because the funny thing is, Mike, there's such a vast difference between the quarterbacks who've won 1, like Aaron, and then multiple. Like, who's won 2? Big Ben's won 2. Eli's not playing anymore. He won 2. I'm just trying to think of like now, like obviously Tom Brady. There's not that many. So if you won 2, you're pretty elite and you're pretty happy about that. The Ravens have 2 rings in like 20 years, and they're considered one of the best franchises ever, right? So we're having
2
this
different
discussion
quarterbacks
right now. Right. We're having this discussion right now as if Aaron Rodgers may not win the Super Bowl this year. Like, I think right now he's probably the odds-on favorite to do it. So if he does that just change the argument where a month from now we're having, oh, yeah, you give the 3 because he just won the Super Bowl? No, he's the same guy. He's going to lift your franchise up and give you a chance to win the Super Bowl, which is all you can ask for.
Now, do you think Hertz could be this generation's Wilson?
Well, I think he's a little further behind as a passer than Wilson coming out of college. I mean, I think he needs more development. Russell was a great passer at Wisconsin. And Russell threw with great anticipation and timing pretty early in his career, knowing that he doesn't have the strongest arm. I think Kaepernick might be maybe the more interesting conversation. I don't remember the first days of Kaepernick because I'm just getting old and what he was like as a passer. But I do remember him rushing for 200 and passing for 200 against the Packers, right? In Green Bay, I think it was, in a championship game. So, see, that wasn't Aaron Rodgers' fault, but no. So I don't know. I think he's got an opportunity if developed correctly and given some time to perhaps become that kind of quarterback.
You're right. And I'm not saying he has to be Russell Wilson or better. I'm just saying the whole Russell Wilson blueprint is that you got this guy. They got him in the 3rd round. They didn't have to pay him. And he was on that rookie deal. They built the whole team around him.
Right.
And they won that Super Bowl because they didn't have to pay the quarterback. And then, of course, once they had to pay Wilson, they had to break the damn team up.
Yeah. Well, that's the NFL, and that's why, the cream rises to the top with quarterbacks. I would say it's not Russell Wilson's fault that Seattle hasn't been back to the Super Bowl, even though this year he's had not a great year, but they've really missed on a lot of picks. And they were really known for making a lot of picks in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th round. Well, while they were building up, the Shermans, the Cam Chancellors of the world, the Michael Bennett's of the world, the Cliff Avrils, they made really good decisions in draft and free agency that they haven't been able to do.
And John Snyder is regarded as a good GM.
He is a good GM. Yeah.
But He missed on some guys.
Oh, well, all GMs miss on guys, you know. Again, judging any individual draft or draft pick is bad. Did the GM put a Super Bowl caliber contender on the field for a season? You know, that's how you judge a guy if the expectation is to win a Super Bowl.
So, this was
So,
a good conversation, Jeff.
yeah, it was good. I enjoy it.
Yeah,
and again,
definitely.
I'm the biggest conversation that is not being had is what if the Eagles fired Howie Roseman, right? Well, look at the two people who Jeffrey Lurie has entrusted to run his franchise since he bought the team: Joe Banner, Howie Roseman, right? Anybody who thinks that Jeffrey Lurie is going out and hiring like John Lynch or Chris Ballard, I don't know, you know, like the guy who came up more through the football guy.
Yeah.
I know you make fun of that, and you're right to do that. Like you're just not seeing the bigger picture here. You know, he's probably going to hire someone in the mold of a Howie or a Joe Banner type.
Right.
Anyway.
Well, and look, does Roseman miss? Absolutely. Does he have egregious misses? They're ones we pointed out. Rieger, egregious to me. That's an egregious miss now, hindsight. Marcus Smith, just an egregious selection. You could have thrown a dart and found a better guy than that. But some of the other things that he does really well, I don't know that you're just bringing in a guy and he's going to do those things well. So he might draft better, but you might be in cap hell. You might have all sorts of cap issues.
Sure.
So you got to yin and yang this thing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you could bring in a guy who doesn't invest in the offensive and defensive lines the way Howie does. And, that, you know, that's been his biggest strength. I think that's actually been a bigger strength than the salary cap manipulation because, to be honest, it's really not hard these days to be under well under the cap. Almost 80% of the league is. So I don't think and he's got guys who are doing contracts now underneath him where that's not only his sole focus. So I think that his constant drafting of offensive linemen, signing of offensive linemen and defensive linemen at a time where you might not think they need one. Like a lot of people were like, yeah, what are you drafting Landon Dickerson for? You need a corner, you need a safety, right? Probably me saying safety, but that makes sense. And look how important Landon Dickerson has been. And I think
it's also the Hertz pick a couple of years ago when I remember we were going back and forth when Broads was doing the show with me and he hated the pick. And I said, look, they just value the backup quarterback more than they do a safety.
Yeah, and I feel that's where I would disagree with them. But, you know, either way,
yeah,
their investment in key areas like quarterback, like I disagree with that. But, I mean, obviously going to get Minshew, people had an issue with that, thinking that was threatening Jalen Hurts. And I'm like, are people crazy? You want a good backup. You learned the value of a backup who's cheap. And you didn't have to use a second-round pick on him, just a sixth. So, so I think he does those things really well as well. I know there's this whole top 5 argument going on. I mean, who cares? Like,
well, there
honestly.
was some guy had him number 5 yesterday. I think this is where this all started.
Yeah. Well, either way, you know, the point is, I think a great discussion is this 7th seed now and how you view the success. Like, is Matt Nagy a successful coach? Do you think Matt Nagy is a good NFL coach or a successful NFL coach?
I don't think it's. I mean, the quarterbacks that he's had has not been fair to judge him.
Okay, that's fine. But
right.
I mean, you have to judge him either way. But I think most people would say, no, he has not been a good NFL
I thought he handled it. I thought he handled this whole quarterback situation poorly.
Sure. But he's been to the playoffs twice in 4 years.
And the first year that he was there, the first year that he was there, they thought he was like this genius guy. I mean, they were way better than they were supposed to be.
Right. But they made the playoffs last year as a 7th seed, whereas 2 years ago, that wouldn't have been a playoff spot. So you'd be saying the guy has made the playoffs once in his life, and it was because they had a great defense. Vic Fangio was the man. He's been terrible. Their offense has been terrible. And you would look at it totally differently, I think. I think you don't, though, because most people think Matt Nagy's not a good coach. But if you talk about the Eagles' success, they're going to be in the playoffs second time in 3 years or 3 out of 4. But
4 out of 5.
Obviously, I'm saying since the Super Bowl, because I'm talking about the trajectory of the team. You know, they have not won a playoff game, though, since 2018. And most people thought they were going to be consistently a playoff Super Bowl caliber team.
Jeff Mosher, Inside the Birds podcast. This was a really extended version of Football at 4. It was good, though. We had a lot of fun, good back and forth. Tomorrow, Andrew's here. Adam is back on Friday, and we will look at the Eagles and the Cowboys, which is kind of a meaningless feel to this Dallas week here, and then playoff football when Mosher's back. We'll know who the Birds will be playing. Jeff, have a great rest of your day, man.
Mike, it's been a pleasure as always. Take care.
This has been a lot of fun. Football at 4 here, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by Caesars Entertainment Group of Atlantic City. Come experience the ultimate sports destinations all season long. Wild Wild West, Tropicana Harris Resort. Book your game day experience at Caesars.com. All right, when we come back, we'll get into a little bit of the Sixers situation, what's happening with them, where they are right now. Paul Hudrick will join us, and this is the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. All right, 440 on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. Sixers back in action tonight. They're in Orlando. The Magic, who have turned into an awful franchise somehow. Like, how are you perpetually this bad? Teams try to be bad sometimes to try to get draft picks like the Sixers did. Orlando has been perpetually bad. Can't remember the last time they were good. Maybe Paul Hudrick does remember the last time the Orlando Magic were actually good. They seemed like they were on the way up there, man. It seemed like they were just kind of, slowly going the other direction, and now they have gone back down to – what the heck happened to this franchise, man?
I guess you have to define good because, they've made the playoffs a couple times. I mean, not as a very high seed. When things were kind of on the up with like Vucevic and all, but with all due respect to Nikola Vucevic, I think what you're seeing now is he's not a guy like he's not your number one guy. Like he's very good as a 4 or 5, like 4th or 5th best offensive option. But I mean, he took them as far as they were going to go. And a guy like Aaron Gordon is another, they sent him off to Denver and they've redundantly drafted guys. Like they never drafted guards. Like they finally did that. Cole Anthony, I think, is really good. Suggs, who's unfortunately both guys are hurt, are both really good too. But yeah,
just so odd. I looked at their record the other day. I said, "Oh my God! Like, are they trying to be this bad? Like some of the like Houston,
they'd be better off trying to be bad.
Seriously, like, are they trying to be bad? They're 7-31. I think they are.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't say they're necessarily trying to be bad, but they're bad because they have a lot of good young players that they're trying to bring along. Like Wagner's really good. I mean, he just won Rookie of the Month. He scorched the Sixers not that long ago. And then they have some intriguing guys, but yeah, I don't know what direction they're going, and I don't know. I don't really know what they've been doing.
Houston's really bad because like they're trying to be bad, right? Like Detroit is
100%. Yes.
Yeah. But they've got 10 wins. Like they won like 5 games in a row at one point, Houston.
Well, they have some. I think Houston's a little bit better than maybe people think, and like a little bit better than the kid, the Turkish big man. He's been outstanding for them. Jalen Green's obviously a stud. Porter Jr. was a guy they took a flyer on, and up until that suspension, he's been really, really good for them. So and Christian Wood's a really solid player. Like I think they're going to trade him at some point for picks. You would think, but I think they're just a little better than even they thought they were going to be.
All right, that's who the Sixers play tonight. They're playing the Orlando Magic, and obviously, this is kind of interesting time for the Sixers. I want to get your take on this whole Tobias Harris thing because, man, you can't have another player going through this, like, friction with the fan base, it feels like. Because to me, and we can talk about this, Paul, Harris is a very untradeable type of guy. So for him to be like, I'm at a point of no return, you don't want to see something like this happen.
No, I mean, and Tobias's contract is like Tobias Harris is a good basketball player. He just happens to make too much money, and he's not playing well right now. And that's just all those things coming together. And that's kind of, I think, what culminated with the fans booing him the other night and all that. So yeah, I mean, he's not a guy you're going to be able to trade just because of that contract. It's too much money left on it, and he's just not. He's not a max player. I mean, he makes max money, but he's not a max player. So yeah, they're kind of what I wrote for Liberty Ballers is basically they're stuck with him. He's stuck with them. So right. The best thing that could happen is him refinding the form. Listen, the guy was a borderline all-star last year. I don't know that just disappeared. I think there are certainly factors when you talk about health, whether it's his health or others, and then not having Ben Simmons. I think that's all affected him greatly.
Right. Paul Hudrick's with us from Liberty Ballers here looking at the Sixers. You're right. They're kind of stuck with each other here, whether they like it or not. And the problem is, let's say somebody said, all right, we'll take Tobias Harris. The issue for me is Harris has a very defined situation. He should be your number 3 guy here, although he's paid like a number 1. If you trade Harris, what you're getting in return is most likely a drop-off from what Harris is at his best.
Well, quite frankly, you would probably have to throw a team an asset in order to, it would be like the Al Horford thing where you would probably have, if you wanted something useful in return, you'd have to give up a draft pick. Because that's right. That's where Tobias Harris is. And it's not that he is a bad player. He's not like one of the worst players in the league, but for his value and the fact that there's still multiple years left on that contract, I think the last year of the deal is approaching $40 million, which with all due respect to Tobias Harris. I mean, that is the issue. It's just the disparity of what he's paid compared to the player that he actually is.
Right. It's almost like the Andre Iguodala situation, where Iguodala signed that deal. He was a good player, but he signed to be the best player, and he never was the best player.
No, and I think I will say that I think Iguodala's is maybe even slightly more unfair, having been around for that too. Like, I think with Tobias, it's like he's literally the highest paid player in franchise history. And while he is currently playing with one of the greatest players in the franchise's history. So I think that even elevates it a little bit more than the Iguodala situation. But I think it is comparable in the sense that they're just, again, guys who just their play is not equal to what their pay is.
Right. And then, of course, Danny comes out and defends, Danny Green comes out and defends Harris. I didn't have a big problem with what he said. What's he going to say? It's just that Green continues to kind of put himself in this role of, hey, the fans need to stay in their lane, which isn't making him any more popular when he's already the guy that fans are like, get rid of this guy.
Right. Well, I'll say this, though, too. Like with Danny, I think maybe part of it is being the veteran on this team, being the oldest guy. Is there some kind of gamesmanship where he's almost making comments like that to take the heat off the other guy and put it on himself, if that makes sense? I think that could be part of it. And I think the biggest thing, Mike, with like his comments today, which I'm with you, I really didn't have any issue with it at all. What he said, how do I put it? It's just like the boos are going to happen. Like, it's just, you can't do anything about it. There's a reason basketball players make a lot of money, and that's part of the deal. So it's unfortunate that it's gotten this way, but I can't say I blame Danny Green one bit for just, to me, sticking up for his teammate.
Well, and this, like, we talked about this on Monday a little, Paul, with the whole situation between Keith and Doc. It's like this 82 game minutia where the players and the teams are now saying that the 82 games is almost like whatever. You're now giving people almost every single night to be like, you're telling us it's whatever. You're not playing it, like this whole concept of the 82 game schedule. It's almost like getting in its own way right now. You know what I mean?
No, and it's hard because, and that's, the other thing with the sport is obviously like load management and guys sitting out games. And there's, the idea, if you're a fan, you buy a ticket, you expect to see Joel Embiid play. You buy it months in advance, perhaps, and then you come to find out he's taking a load management day off. So I mean, it's just, there is like this slight disconnect in that sense with like the league and the players, and I
would say, because I was thinking about this today. I was like, there was a time, because I'm like, I heard the promo as I was driving in. Sixers play tonight against the Magic. Listen to the game here. And I'm thinking there was a time, not even that long, maybe last year, where the Sixers were like the hottest product going, right? And maybe peripherally they still are, like jersey sales. They still fill the building for the most part. I don't know what this new vax law there, if they're still filling it every single night with that, but they're still one of the most popular NBA teams. But does it feel like some of the rub of this height of popularity is dropping a bit?
I think so, because the reality is that, too, the Sixers are the most drama-filled franchise, too. So I think that's a big part of the reason why they always kind of find themselves in the national spotlight. And right now, despite the Ben Simmons situation, there really kind of isn't like drama, Mike. I mean, and for years it was always something. Like the Ben Simmons thing certainly is hanging over them, but right now, while they're playing well, no one's really talking about it. I mean, you're talking about trade rumors and all that, but yeah, exactly. That's it.
Let's talk about some of the trade rumors, because Sacramento today, I guess, has come out and essentially said, hey, we're now willing to kind of open up the coffers a little bit more. So do you anticipate that could forge these two teams to have a conversation at least?
It increases the chances for sure. When you're talking about, to me, I know a lot of people like De'Aaron Fox. I think Halliburton's the guy that makes more sense here. I think he's the guy that's the better fit. But I also think that would be the guy that Sacramento would be less willing to give up. So, but yeah, I think this report that came out today, I believe from The Athletic, it certainly increases the chances, because it just makes their offer is better. If you offer me Tyrese Halliburton and Buddy Hield for Ben Simmons, that certainly gets my attention more than, just De'Aaron Fox or something like that. So I think this does it potentially could make these teams a little bit more likely to trade partners.
Right, because like Sacramento's is essentially Sacramento's owner, hey, we need to figure out a way to get Ben Simmons here.
I think the directive is more, let's get, make a big move that's going to get us to the playoffs. So if Monty McNair views that as Ben Simmons, and I think he got the green light basically, to make that trade just to get them, raise that floor a little bit with a guy like Simmons.
Right, because the report today, as we is that they're making De'Aaron Fox and Halliburton available in trade talks, and it kind of hints at, hey, that would open up things for Ben Simmons because Morey has got a dead set that one of those two guys need to be a part of the deal, right? Because a lot of people, somebody tweeted at me yesterday, would I do Bagley and Hield for Simmons? And I'm like, I don't know, does Bagley and Hield for Simmons do anything for you?
No, absolutely nothing. If you're not, to even start a discussion, you have to offer Fox or Halliburton if you're the Kings. Like that just gets you in the door. But yeah, again, if you say Halliburton and Hield, that has some interest in to me a little bit, because I think Hield is also a guy who, he was attractive before, but now I think he's even improved. But yeah, I certainly think, Hield and Bagley, just quite frankly, it's just not enough.
All right, we're talking with Paul Hudrick here from Liberty Ballers inside the Sixers. Sixers magic tonight. Joel Embiid, player of the month, and we talk about his window and everything. Somebody tweeted at me the other day and asked an interesting question. How much is he an aggressive guy in the organization? Does he have a voice in any of this at all?
I would say he has to have some form of voice, because I think he's the guy that this is all happening for. Like, this is the guy they're building the franchise around, and the guy they believe is the championship piece. I think that the biggest thing, I think the smartest thing the Sixers did was bringing in Daryl Morey from this perspective, is that I think his link to Sam Hinkie, I think just his cachet basically as an executive, I think that has gained Joel Embiid's trust. So I think as much as, he probably has a voice, I think the bigger thing is that he trusts Morey to go forward to build the team that he thinks best fits him. So I think that more so maybe than the idea that I'm sorry, Mike, I'm a little under the weather, so I apologize.
We all are, man. I'm struggling with you, brother. I'm here. My voice has been shot all day. Well, I guess the question was posed to me, does Embiid, who is his guy that he recruits for? Like, who's his friends in the league? Because that's what the league is now. Who's my friend? Who do I want to try to get here? Who should I tell my GM to go call? And I said, that's an interesting question. Like, I don't know who Embiid run. Andrew Wiggins, like they played college ball together. Like, who would Embiid push for?
Yeah, the guy that was his best friend is Jimmy Butler. Quite frankly. So, but we all know that's not happening again. But yeah, it's fair, Mike. I don't know the guy. I know him and Bradley Beal have been friendly before. I know they've been very complimentary of each other's games.
That's interesting.
Yeah, there was the whole thing last year where Bradley Beal really scorched them, and there was a fun back and forth there. But other than that, yeah, it's a fair point that I don't know the guy. It's disappointing, because to me, Joel Embiid is so good, you would think so many guys would be begging to come here, but it doesn't seem to be the case to that point. So yeah, other than Beal and their kind of connection, I'm really not sure who else he would really connect with.
How's your lineup card looking? You just keep crossing guys off on who's playing, who's here, who's not. Charlie Brown's here tonight.
Charlie Brown, Braxton Key as well from the Blue Coats. Yeah, they got to do what they got to do right now.
Unbelievable.
Everyone's dealing with it, man. It's rough right now.
Crazy. All right, Sixers tonight. Orlando is where they are. You can hear that game on 97.3. They'll play the Spurs on Friday. The Rockets, that game has been moved to Monday. That was originally January 24th. That is now moved to January the 10th. And I don't know why that is, but I was looking forward to the game on my birthday. They took it off my birthday, and now it's January 10th. He's Paul Hudrick. Check him out over at Liberty Ballers, at Paul Hudrick on Twitter. All right, feel better, man.
Appreciate it, Mike.
All right, we're all under the weather, man. Paul's fighting it. I'm fighting it, but we got through. Good conversation on, that was somebody tweeted at me the other night. Who's Joel Embiid's, buddy in the league? Like, who would he go out? And, everybody's always pushing for, I want to play with my friend. I want to play with this guy. I thought it was an interesting question. Like, who is Joel Embiid's guy that he would say, hey, come play with me here? Man, we're in 5 o'clock hour on the other side. We come back. We'll talk a little football with former NFL offensive lineman Joe Valerio. We call it Cup of Joe every Wednesday night at 5 o'clock right here on the Sports Bash. You kind of get a front row seat to just two guys chopping it up, talking football. It is the Sports Bash live, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. If you are watching the show live video on the YouTube channel, you can get the YouTube channel on your smart TV. Just launch YouTube. You can watch us right on your home TV, on the YouTube app on your phone. And when we come back, you'll see Joe Valerio's smiling face on the YouTube channel. He'll join me over there. Coming up next here on the Sports Bash. Hey guys, the College National Championship is finally here, and the time is now to get in on Prop Swap. Prop swappers are cashing in, like Jesse from New York, who sold his 100-1 Michigan college football ticket for $1,800 on Prop Swap. Jesse locked in his profit when he turned his $120 bet into $1,800. The buyer got great odds, and the seller made 15 times his bet. PropSwap has thousands of buyers and sellers all across the country, so you'll always find the best odds and collect the most money for your bets. PropSwap also has new exclusive, fantastic features like filtering listed tickets based on the best value, a free activity feed to stay in the know with all the big sales, and red hot tickets for sale, a loyalty rewards program that turns your ticket sales into extra bonus cash, and a first deposit cash match up to $500 when you use promo code ODDS on your first deposit. Get started and join the real sports bettors on PropSwap as the Alabama-Georgia showdown is Monday night. So hurry to go to PropSwap.com or download the PropSwap app today. PropSwap, where America buys and sells sports bets. All right, welcome back. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. And, of course, you can watch the show live over on the YouTube channel. Joe Valerio played in the NFL. We do Cup of Joe. We just talk a little football. We're going to do it for the first time in 2022 as we got two playoff situations this weekend. We've got a couple games that have some playoff meaning. We've also got the Eagles in the playoffs. Joe, who would have thought a couple of weeks ago we were talking about the Eagles and could they be a playoff team? Well, Happy New Year. Here they are. The Eagles are in the playoffs, man. Happy New Year to you. I don't think Joe can hear me. Joe cannot hear me. Joe, can you hear me? Nope, he cannot hear me. So we'll try to connect with Joe. He is having trouble hearing us there. But, yeah, we had talked a bunch about can this team be a playoff team, and Joe was pretty steadfast on, hey, if they can run the ball. That was one of the things Joe was kept saying. Hey, this team can run the ball. They can run the ball. They got this good offensive line. And we're wondering, hey, can they run the ball enough to get them through the playoffs or get them to the playoffs? Well, the answer to that question turned out to be yes, they can. You know what else is interesting here? The one thing that's interesting here, okay, we had last night, I tweeted something out. Someone talked about, the Eagles beat up on an easy schedule, right? The Eagles did beat up on an easy schedule. I'm not denying that fact. But what I also said was this: 22 of the 32 teams in the NFL won 9 games or less. So my point on this was, yeah, the Eagles might have – I don't know who had the easiest schedule in the league in the end. I don't know who played the easiest percentage. Like the Eagles might have been 431, the next team 435, something to that effect. But my point is everybody's playing a very mediocre to poor schedule because the whole league has 22 of the 32 teams have 9 wins or less. Crazy when you think about it. So, like the Giants played an awful schedule. Washington played an awful schedule. Guess what? They didn't take advantage of it. Philadelphia did. You could say, well, they beat it. They had an easy schedule. And so did some other teams. And they didn't take advantage of it. Philadelphia took advantage of the fact that they had an easy schedule. And they used that to pile up some wins late in the season that got them into the playoffs. Washington, the Giants, they also had easy schedules that they could have capitalized on, and they didn't do so. So this whole, they beat up on easy teams. Everybody beat up on some easy teams. That's kind of the way that it goes. I think we got Joe. There he is. And Joe Valerio, Happy New Year to you, man. What's happening?
Hey, Mike. Happy New Year, man. Sorry, a little technical difficulties with my headset, but it's great to be on with you, man. Chopping it up after the break. Eagles going to the playoffs 4 out of 5 years, right? Listen, I'm excited about this team. Listen, we're a playoff team, and we got 3 first-round draft picks next year. So
right, exactly. The arrow seems to be pointing. The arrow seems to be pointing up. Now we had talked for weeks, kind of lead up. Hey, can this be a playoff team? And you kind of lamented, hey, they got this great offensive line and they can run the ball. And that seemed to be their formula, was that they just stuck with that plan. They went with this offensive line and they just kept running behind it and kept running behind it. And here in the end, it worked out for them.
And they kept making adjustments, Mike. I think that the best thing about what they did offensively, look, besides Jalen Hertz's performance was fantastic, right? He really stepped up. They made adjustments. I mean, when I was really keying in on the upfront matchups, because we talked about that, right? This team needed to go with the run and stick with it, and it wasn't working that great at the beginning of the game. I mean, they were struggling a little bit, but you know what they did? They adjusted. They spread things out a little bit. They got out of some of those heavy formations. They went a little bit lighter, and it kind of opened up a little bit of the zone game for them, and bam, it worked. And, once we got past that, weird interception, another positive thing, right here, I'm all over the place. I'm so excited about this team. I'm all over the place. I'm excited about the adjustments they made in the run game, and they stuck with it. And also Jalen Hurts sticking with it. Quarterbacks can get down after a play like that, a bad luck play. Dallas Goedert, should catch that ball, and then it gets intercepted, and they're down 10-0. spotting the Washington football team a lead, and it's like, oh, here we go, right? Our one chance to get back in the playoffs, and they stuck with it. And Jalen, his confidence never wavered, and I think that was the second big sign of what was real positive about that game.
Joe, a lot of conversation is about the slow starts. Why do teams, in your mind, get off? Like, why is that a perpetual issue for? Is there something a team does that perpetually happens? And it just, hey, that's the ebb and flow of a season? Why is that?
Well, it is an ebb and flow, Mike, and coaches get really caught up in this whole scripting the first 20, right? I remember when we first introduced that concept when Paul Hackett came to Kansas City, who, he was one of the architects of the West Coast offense back in the Joe Montana era, right, in San Francisco. So then they bring Paul Hackett and Joe Montana to Kansas City, and now we're going from Smash Mouth. If ever fans can remember Christian Okoye, Barry Word, like 250-pound plus tailbacks, right? They were bigger than any player I blocked in the Ivy League. They were my tailbacks. I'm like, what the heck? So we went from this, like, just all we knew we were going to do was run the ball and do some play action, to this West Coast offense. So we bring in the first 20, right? And Paul Hackett was one of the original coaches that started that whole offensive coordinator script the first 20 philosophy. And it can be a blessing, and it can be a curse, right? Because you have this idea in your mind of what plays you want to run to start the game, and then all of a sudden, one thing doesn't work, and the next thing doesn't work, and the next thing is, oh my God, now we got to make our adjustments, and you don't have the time on the fly to make those adjustments, and you got to wait till halftime. So long answer to a short question, Mike. I think a lot of it has to do with the prescriptive, scripted offense that a lot of these coordinators want to go into the game with, and it takes them time to get things moving. If I know we talk about the Chiefs, I don't want to make too many parallels, but the Chiefs for the last 3 years prior to this year really struggled with that. If you go back and look at the box scores of even the Super Bowl winning Chiefs, it was like, third quarter, fourth quarter, putting up 10, 17, 21 points in the third and fourth quarter to win games, and nothing in the first half. Like, how does this explosive offense not score in the first half of a game? Again, it was that, I think what Andy Reid did and Eric Bieniemy did in Kansas City is they got away from that prescriptive offense in the first half, and they're pulling it all out now.
Yeah,
they're just unloading, and it's working for Kansas City, right? They went, they tough loss against Cincinnati, but they won 8 out of their last 9 games by just letting it go, let it rip.
Well, you're an offensive lineman. How many teams do you know of? I mean, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but where the offensive lineman is almost the star of the team.
It doesn't happen a lot, but I'll tell you, those who know, we had a saying in the locker room, right? Especially as offensive linemen, because we had to find our own joy, Mike, right? Offensive linemen, my dad, when I came home and told my dad I was playing offensive line and asked, when I was going to get my name on the announcements, he said, when you get a holding call, son. I was like, oh, great, Dad. Like, is this where I really want to play? But we had a saying that those who know. And in a locker room, the offensive line, and I'm not just saying this because I was a lineman, I'm saying this completely objectively. In the locker room, the team knows who the stars are. And they know that when the offensive line is humming and when the chemistry is working, at least offensively, it's what makes everything hum, right? It's the straw that stirs the drink up front. And when you have an offensive line that's playing like the Eagles' offensive line, they're going to become what others see, even to the outsider and the casual fan, is that they are the star of the game, because look at the time that they were giving Jalen. Like, even on some of what looked like breakdowns, where Jalen was having to find the pocket within the pocket, there was never that like sack or rush that like got right to him. It was always him finding the pocket within the pocket, guys mirroring their guys, staying in front of them, staying in front of the defensive players, and giving him an opportunity to look down the field. And you see what happens. Bam, then you turn it over to the run game and the mesh and the zone blocking and the way that those guys are getting their hips together, and they're, I've said this before on the show, right? When you can block a linebacker with a down lineman's butt, that's when things are working. So for listeners out there, watch that. Watch this Eagles offensive line. I've looked at the film, broken down some plays here and there, and they're blocking the second level linebacker with the down lineman's butt. And that's when that happens, you're going to see things explode, and you're going to see the pass game open up. You're going to see the run game. You're going to you're going to be able to chop down the field and own it, right? Just look at the total yards that the Eagles had in that game. It was fantastic, right? I mean,
Yeah.
they owned it. And, and Miles, booby, love what he was doing. I mean, come on. And he only had the 38-yard run. He had a 7.3 yard average in the game with a 38. That's not like it was a 99-yard run that like blows his average up. Those are big chunks of yards that he's taking up every time he touches the ball. And again, you got to give it to the guys up front. And then you throw Jordan Howard in there. He's spelling them with 4.6 yards average per carry with a 15-yard run as his longest. And man, now you're talking.
Well, it's funny because you're probably going to be the 7 or 6 seed, depending on what happens this weekend. So that you're going to be an underdog. But the offensive line, to me, has been their equalizer the whole season. Like, that has made the games close, competitive, and you wonder in a playoff scenario, running the ball like that, does that turn into an equalizer?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, to a more talented team playing against a team that is less talented but has this ability to kind of run the ball. How that shortens the game.
Absolutely, Mike. You're exactly what it does. It shortens the game. It puts the time of possession on your side, right? Whenever you own the clock, right, you eliminate mistakes, right? You don't have it. Whenever you go back and look historically, teams that have owned the time of possession, fewer interceptions because there's fewer passes, fewer opportunities to have or fewer mistakes throwing the ball deep downfield, right? And just chewing it up. And that's what wins games. And that's when you watch like Navy, right? When Navy plays, right? They go against these big schools and like, how the heck is Navy, going to hold up running the triple option? Look, every once in a while, you own the clock, you make other teams make mistakes, and you own the time of possession, you can win a game. And that's what I'm excited to see for whoever they play in the first round of the playoffs, if they can own the clock. And again, Mike, I think a lot of it has to go back to not just the talent of this group, but the fact that they've played together for multiple games going into a really nice stretch. That is really the key. Knock on wood, health, the health of the line and the lack of shifting and moving and jumping guys around at different positions really is at the heart of the matter. And that, and they've got, you just hope that they've got the depth that if they did have an injury here and there, that they could plug one person in. You just don't want to see like what happened to Kansas City in the Super Bowl where, going into that game, they got guys who should be playing left tackle, playing right tackle, guys who play in center, playing right guard. Like that was a disaster. And to me, that's the whole thing, is to hold your breath and make sure that front five stays healthy through the playoffs, and anything can happen.
Now, what are you seeing with what's going on with the defense, where early in the game, I mean, they're giving up again. Heineke last week, he just all over the field, completion. And we talked about it earlier, Joe, in the season when they were playing the good quarterback, they're giving up 85% completion percentage. You can't get into a playoff game and have the same mindset, can you? Can you have the same scheme set in the playoffs against these quarterbacks you're going to face? Or do you not have a choice?
Well, you don't have a choice, right? You've got to bring pressure, right? I mean, that's going to be the key. The playoffs, as you watch, it gets ratcheted up with the amount of pressure that teams, will apply in the playoffs. Is that I don't say hope is a strategy. Hope should never be a strategy, but it's the ability to take a quarterback out of his game and have him make mistakes in the big pressure situations, because it's one and done, right? You're in the playoffs. You got there's a lot of young quarterbacks out there. Granted, we got Aaron Rodgers and some others that we'll be looking at and staring down the barrel of in the playoffs. If depending on how it shakes out, you're gonna see some veteran leadership out there. But if you can go against somebody and you can make quarterbacks make mistakes, that's what you want to do. And so I would hope that Gannon can put together a game plan that brings some pressure, but also, not too much pressure.
Now,
We
let me
saw
ask you
that.
this, Joe. You played offensive line. I have this conversation with people a lot. As a defensive player, there's a difference between it, like there are good blitzers and not good blitzers. Like, does he not like a player might have the instinct or the intuition to be a good blitzer? You know, is that accurate?
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. Definitely. There were definitely guys that you would game plan for from either a linebacker who was going to be dogging or a corner or safety who was going to blitz. Right. You definitely knew who could pass rush. Right. Because there's a skill to it. Right. There's a timing to it.
Right.
There's the ability to take on a lineman and be able to juke them and jive them as you're coming up there if they're able to, and the ability to go against a running back just the same way that there's great pass rushers, right? I mean, it's no different. There is absolutely a skill to blitzing and dogging, right?
Right. So you wonder if John Gannon doesn't have the personnel where he feels this guy's a good blitzer, or I have a blitzer that I can count on that can get home when I need him to. Because people keep asking, you're playing Tyler Heineke, you're playing Jake Fromm the week before, and they still weren't really blitzing all that much.
Yeah, and that could be it. That could be his lack of sort of confidence in what they're doing, or trying to make young quarterbacks like that make mistakes, right? I mean, if you keep everybody back in coverage and you try to disguise, right? I know, he hasn't had, in looking at some of this, he hasn't had the luck, I'll call it, with being able to disguise some of the coverages. And I don't know whether it's just a lack of positioning and where he has the players lined up, but it doesn't seem it. What I'm getting at, long answer, is I think what he's doing is he's kind of on the same way on offense. You telegraph your offensive plays, and quarterbacks can telegraph. It's almost like we're telegraphing the coverage to the quarterback, and we're giving them an opportunity. Right, we're giving the quarterbacks, and on the other team an opportunity to really see the field and know what the coverage is right before they even drop back.
Yeah.
Right, and so that can be something that younger coordinators haven't really learned yet, is the positioning and being able to disguise coverage so that it makes that quarterback have that one. All you need is that one extra second for a quarterback to make him overthink, right? And to think, oh no, that's not the coverage I thought it was going to be. And I think maybe that's sort of like a skill maybe that he needs to, kind of pick up.
Now, we talked a little bit about the run game, but I do want to talk about how far Hertz keeps coming each week, the progression you see from him weekly to where he is now. I mean, it feels like each week, Dan Orlovsky does a lot of breakdowns on TV, and, he was a big Wentz guy. And then you go on his Twitter and he's doing the Hertz stuff and he's saying, man, I keep seeing the progressions, and I keep seeing, like, if you're not seeing this, this, and this, you're missing out. Are you seeing a quarterback that's growing every single week to the point where you feel comfortable that, hey, he's a guy that I can win with?
Oh yeah, I think I think they look. They're developing. They're giving him the opportunity, right? They're giving him, they're giving him the real chance to be successful. Which a lot of times you'd be so surprised that NFL coaches don't want to do that. They don't want to give, they don't want to give that quarterback. They're afraid of failure so much that they'll either rely on a strength and try to overcompensate. And I think the thing that Jalen's getting right now is he's getting the confidence that he's ready to be that next level quarterback, right? I saw it happen in Kansas City with a good friend of mine who we drafted in the second round, and we kind of then all of a sudden we went for let's get Dave Craig, who was after a 10 or 11 year career with the Seahawks. Because we have such a good defense, we don't want to lose. And then it was, okay, let's bring in Joe Montana. Let's do this. Let's have Steve Bono be the next quarterback. Let's bring in Rich Gannon, who, was obviously went on a great career with the Raiders, but he was somebody who was a journeyman who was coming in. Like, you really have to admire the Eagles right now, just saying, all right, we're going to go with Jalen no matter what happens. And it's giving him the confidence to know that they're gonna play him, right? And I think that's really what drives quarterbacks is that
Well,
Troy Aikman did it in Dallas, right? In Dallas, Troy Aikman, the Cowboys organization didn't care whether they went 1-15, which they did in his first year, right? I think they were 1-15 or
yeah,
2-14,
1-15.
right? And they were like, you know what? I know we've got this great defense, and I know we've got great running backs, and I know we've got good skill positions, but you know what? We're going to go with Troy, whether we go 1-15 or 15-1. And I think that means something. And I wish more organizations would do that rather than trying to do this stopgap thing. That's my thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's interesting because they're going to have a big decision to make in this
Yeah.
offseason with these 3 picks and what do they
Yeah.
do? And have they accumulated enough information, intel on Hertz to make a qualified
Yeah.
decision?
Yeah, exactly. No, I know that, and that's what they're going to do, right? I mean, the other defensive coordinators don't just sit around and twiddle their thumbs, right, and wait for for things to happen. They're going to game plan, and they're going to look at everything. But I think Jalen can do it with his arm too. He's proving that, right? As much as we may have doubted it, early on, is he going to be somebody who is truly just a running quarterback? I mean, I think it's super respected when you can throw for 214 yards and you can rush for 44. I think that adds up to a pretty nice number for a quarterback. And I apologize earlier for getting the stat. I was looking at the old box score from the last game, so I apologize for that. Happy New Year, everybody. But when you get somebody like that who can do it and be that double threat like that, maybe it works. Maybe the Eagles organization can get it to work.
I got to ask, I'm going to go off a little bit. Tennessee right now, the number 1 seed. They haven't had Henry essentially the whole year. How fearful would you be, if that team gets Henry back? They were winning without him, really. They have 7 wins against playoff teams. So is Tennessee, as much as people feel like they've written them off, is Tennessee the favorite?
Yeah, I mean, well, for a couple reasons. Number one, they're winning without Derrick Henry, and what will it look like when they get him back? So, if you're not a Tennessee fan, you're hoping that they completely botch the game plan by trying to force it into Derrick, right? Right. That's like, if you're not a fan, that's what you're hoping for. You're hoping for that they put too much pressure on the organization and too much pressure on his shoulders that he's going to have to make this ginormous comeback and carry the load of the team. Sometimes you just got to go with what you're doing and what's winning. The Chiefs did it. I saw happen in it was 97, right, where they did it with Elvis Gerback and Rich Gannon, right, which ultimately led to Rich Gannon going to the Raiders and having an All-Pro, Super Bowl career and NFL MVP career. They should have stuck with Rich, but they had this pressure. Elvis had started the season out. Rich Gannon, local Philly guy, right, St. Joe's Prep, University of Delaware. He wins, like 6 games, and one of those games would happen to be in Philadelphia, right? He won a game in Philly, and in 1997, and with the Chiefs, and then they're like, Rich, we're sorry we're sorry you won us 6 games, and we're going to go with our original quarterback, and the Chiefs blew it. And a lot of people will look back on that and say, God, why didn't they just go with Rich? Their defense was probably the best defense up to that point in the last 20 years in the NFL, and they blew it because they decided to go with somebody because they overthought that player's value and disregarded the 6 games that Rich had won at quarterback. So that's if you're a non-Tennessee fan, that's what you're hoping for. That's what you have to be careful of, right? You have to be careful of that when you're managing, the personnel of an NFL team, is that you don't. I don't know. It's kind of like that philosophy, Mike. If it's not broke, don't fix it.
Well, we got week 18 this week, and then the playoffs will be here when we congregate again next week. Joe Valerio, the Eagles are in, the Chiefs are in, the playoff field is going to be set, and we'll talk about all that coming up next week right here with Joe Valerio. Of course, retired Kansas City Chief. He was a Penn Quaker, class of 1991, and he, of course, joins us right here weekly for a good old cup of Joe. All right, Joe, Happy New Year. We'll see you again next week, pal.
Thanks, Mike. Happy New Year, bud.
Good stuff, man. I love listening to him break down all the, the nuances of the offensive line and how the Eagles have I really like when he breaks down talking about the second level and the two guys, working together. The Eagles, if you watch what Joe talks about and then watch Mailata and Dickerson and Kelsey, the three of them, bang, always together and then breaking off, finding guys, blocking down the field. That's why the run game has worked so well for them. All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. When we come back, we'll talk more NFL, get Jeff Kerr's take on what's happening around the league. I want to ask him, I'm going to throw these trade scenarios at him, see what he thinks. And he has a tweet out there. He tweeted something. All right, I'm going to follow him on, you guys should follow him on Twitter, at Jeff Kerr NFL, at Jeff Kerr CBS. He tweeted something 1 hour ago. I'm going to bring it up to him. You don't want to miss it. It's coming up next. At 5:32, Sports Bash Live 97.3 ESPN. Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports. Now, I told you he tweeted something out 1 hour ago. All right, 1 hour ago, he tweeted something out. I want to ask him about that and some of the other things that we have discussed today here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Jeff Kerr covers the league nationally for CBS Sports. He tweeted out 1 hour ago, Howie Roseman is a top 10 GM in the league. The league has respect for him. He seems to be a very polarizing conversation over the last 48 hours, Jeff Kerr. What's going on, my man?
So it's actually funny, and I swear I did not mean to set up McMullen like this morning, but on Birds 365, I had a question for him, and, I didn't even bring up really Howie Roseman until this question, but, we all know how Eagles fans feel about him. Some media members, like you said, Mike, he's very polarizing. And I asked, with this year intact, with what he's done, is Howie Roseman a top 10 GM in football? And McMullen's top 5. And I'm like, okay, I thought he made a bunch of valid points. Didn't mention draft history, but mentioned the cap, and mentioned the late round picks. Like we talked about the other day, Mike, Josh Sweat, Jordan Mailata, guys like that. Everybody likes to point out the Jalen Ragers and JJ Arcega-Whitesides of the world, but he does hit on a lot of late round picks. And, we talked about after a show, and I'm thinking, okay, so who would be better than him? And, Brett Veach would be up there, obviously. Eric DeCosta on the Baltimore Ravens is probably up there. Pittsburgh's GM, Bill Belichick, obviously. So, but yeah, you could put Howie Roseman in there. I love Jason Litt as the general manager, but did anybody really think Jason Litt was a great general manager until he was able to get Tom Brady in line? I mean, and you got to give a lot of credit to him for that. But John Lynch, no, I don't think I go him. Les Snead hasn't won a Super Bowl yet. And that's the key thing here, Mike. Howie Roseman has a Super Bowl title, and that's got to elevate him a little bit.
Absolutely. Now, the drafting. I don't know if there's anything that's more important or less important, but I said, look, for Roseman's misses, okay, I asked a question on my Twitter feed and got just bombarded. He's had some egregious misses. Rager is an egregious miss when Jefferson's the next pick. Marcus Smith is an egregious miss. Now, the problem I have with Marcus Smith being an egregious pick, there's not a guy around Marcus Smith that you're like, oh, if they would have taken that guy, that really would have changed the, like sometimes where you're picking, you might take a guy and he doesn't help you, but there wasn't a lot of help to be had in that area. But
I thought HaHa Clinton Dix would have been an ideal pick for them, but you're right. There wasn't anybody where you're like, oh man, they completely missed out on that player. It's not like 2001 when the Eagles took Freddie Mitchell because they needed a receiver and Reggie Wayne just happened to go 5 picks after him. That type of thing.
Right. So let's say he's an average drafter. Okay, mediocre, average, not great, not very good. He's more on the average. Like you said, he's better in the later rounds than he has been earlier. Although the second round, I mean, you got guys like Hertz and Goddard and Miles Sanders. Like they have gotten some guy, Dickerson. They've done a good job in that second round. It's really like in the back end of the first round the middle to back end of the first round is where they've had their struggles. They've done a good job of finding late guys, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th. But my point is, for his failures in the draft, I think he laps the field in a lot of other areas like cap management and that kind of stuff, where if you don't have a guy who's hitting home runs in the draft all the time, and those guys are extremely hard to find, you better have a guy who can manipulate the cap and do those kind of things. I think that's why the Eagles remain one of the most consistent franchises in football.
And you know what, Mike? This has gone since Andy Reid, really since the Eagles fired Ray Rhodes. When Tom Modrak was GM, vice president of football, I forget what his actual title was. I'm pretty sure it was GM. The Eagles always made it a priority to build in the trenches, have a dominant offensive line, have a dominant defensive line, and we're going to win more games than we lose. And that has held true for 21, 22 years. And I think that's why Howie Roseman was more optimistic, and why you and I were a little bit more optimistic about this team than most, because we knew that their offensive line had depth. We knew that they had players. It was more of, if they get hurt is where they'll be tested. And look, they're on their 4th left guard right now, and they're still the best offensive line in football. Their defensive line took a huge hit with Brandon Graham's loss, but they're still getting to the quarterback. You just have to rely on Derek Barnett a little more. And look, Ryan Kerrigan was a miss, but that was a 1-year contract. Big deal. Eric Wilson was a miss. Okay, you come. They moved on. They had the audacity to cut him. They were smart enough to move on. But you found late gems like a TJ Edwards, Alex Singleton, guys you signed off the street. They're solid linebackers for them. Are they ever going to be superstars? No, but they can contribute to a football team. Trading for Darius Slay, signing Malcolm Jenkins, guys like that. Howie Roseman has done a really good job in the free agent route. Have the Eagles had some misses? Yeah, but outside, I think everybody just has bad memories of the Dream Team from 10 years ago. But really, Roseman has done an excellent job in free agency since the Nnamdi Asomugha, Vince Young, Ronnie Brown, debacle. And he was able to get a good player in Evan Mathis out of that.
I want to throw a couple ideas your way and see what you think here. All right. We had this conversation. The Eagles have 3 picks, obviously. We're starting to hear a lot of teams, Baker Mayfield, they're going to move on and yada, yada, yada. The Eagles would have the ability to call anybody and make an offer.
They got 3 first-rounders.
Right. Do you trade 3 first-round picks for Aaron Rodgers?
Him, yes.
Now, here's my caveat to that is think.
Yeah, here's your
How many more years is he playing?
The thing with Tom Brady's freaking nature, I know. I could say Aaron Rodgers plays at a high level for 3-4 more years. I think the mentality will always be there with him. He's always going to be one of the smartest players on the football field. So I think that's going to help him. But Aaron Rodgers seems to take care of himself pretty well. So I would say 3-4 more. If you feel you can win a Super Bowl in that 3-4 year stretch, I think you do it. But here's the issue, Mike. I don't want them to do that because they already have a quarterback they can develop. They don't need this. It's not like they got Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock a quarterback right now.
Yeah. My thing with Rodgers is, I don't know how many years he's playing. I'm giving up 3 picks that those guys could help me for 10. Rodgers, maybe he's around for 2 or 3. I don't know.
Question, Mike, if you can look in your crystal ball and you're going to get a Super Bowl out of the deal, do you do it?
It's another tough one. I said he's played in Green Bay for 17 years. He only has 1 Super Bowl in 17 or 16 tries.
You know who I blame for most of that? The guy in Dallas.
Yeah, well, that's true. But I'm saying you had Aaron Rodgers for 17 years and only won 1 Super Bowl. If you only have him for 2 years, you're saying you got to win a Super Bowl in one out of 2 years there. That's a tough pill there.
It would be 2 fun years to watch football. I'll say that.
Oh, yeah.
It'd be like Peyton Manning in Denver. You're not sure if you're going to win it, but you're going to be pretty damn close every single year.
Yeah, that's a good one. Manning in Denver towards the end there. But in the end, he was really poor.
Yeah, he was. And
you can't have Aaron Rodgers be like Manning was in his second year in Denver.
I remember I interviewed TJ Ward last Super Bowl week. I interviewed him. And all we did was talk about that team. And Ward said, Manning's like, don't worry, guys. I just got to show up for 1 game. 1 game. And he did. I mean, he didn't lose the game. And I think that's what Manning was going. But you're right. Like, Manning's drop-off was huge. But Manning also had significant neck surgery, too, that I think played a role in that. What significant surgery is Aaron Rodgers had? He has COVID toe or whatever he's got. I don't think it's killing him.
What would you give up for Watson? Let's say he's clear of everything, and now he wants. Now the problem with Watson is he has to approve a trade to you.
Yeah. So the max I would give up is 2 of those first-round picks.
So you go 2.
If he had none of this, I think he's worth all 3. But there's baggage with him, and he's a PR nightmare. I wouldn't want him. But if I'm just talking strictly football, 2 first-round picks right now.
What about Russell Wilson?
I wouldn't give up 3. And I love Russell Wilson. I would not give up 3. I think Jalen Hurts can be a Russell Wilson.
That was my other point. Is Jalen Hurts this generation's Russell Wilson? I mean, Russell Wilson was drafted 10 years ago.
Yeah, and if you look at Jalen Hurts, he runs like Wilson. He runs like Russell Wilson. He can break out plays like Russell Wilson. Was he as accurate as Russell Wilson was coming out of college? No, but Russell Wilson also was in an offense in NC State that always threw the football. Jalen Hurts wasn't really doing that at Alabama. He didn't do that until he got to Lincoln Riley. There's still so much to learn with Jalen Hurts. And Russell Wilson evolved as a quarterback, too, over time. Russell Wilson wasn't the greatest passer right off the bat, but he knew how to get the job done. And look, Jalen Hurts just keeps improving year in and year out. I just wrote a column like for CBS Sports today. It's like Donovan McNabb. It's like Donovan McNabb's second year. Just keeps getting better as the year goes on. And lo and behold, the Eagles finished 6-2 and reached the playoffs, just like in 2000.
That to me is going to be interesting. Like to me, Jeff, I've said this. I have 3 picks. I worked hard for those 3 picks. I would rather keep Hertz on the rookie deal. I'm not drafting a quarterback in this class. There's just not a guy that moves me enough. And I'm rolling with Hertz for another year unless I feel that there's a deal that I just can't refuse for one of those 3 quarterbacks. Hertz, Wilson, Watson. Otherwise, Hertz is my guy for next year with 3 first-round talents added to this roster.
I'll tell you what. There is one thing that would get me really attracted to Aaron Rodgers being here. Because I have a feeling Devontae Adams would go with him. And you can have him and Devonta Smith with that offensive line, with that running game, and a defense that seems to be getting better by the week. I don't care who they're playing. That's a scary football.
Well, that's an addition that you throw Adams into the mix as well. That's an interesting one. Speaking of Aaron Rodgers, what do you make of this whole I won't vote for him for MVP because he's a jerk?
I'll say it, bullshit. Absolute bullshit. Like, I'm sorry. I don't care if you're the biggest asshole in the world, Mike. You don't not vote for somebody. There are a lot of people in the NFL I don't particularly like. I'm going to vote for him.
Yeah.
I
said, Hub's a guy, too, who's been around for years. I mean, for him to actually come out and admit, I'm not voting. And he said he wouldn't vote for him in the preseason because of what he put the team through by saying he didn't want to be there.
But did the Packers end up really did he really end up costing the Packers anything? No. If the Packers were 10-6, I feel like his point would be more valid, but they're still the best team in football.
Yeah. His whole explanation I thought was just garbage. Hey, look, I said, even if he said he's the biggest jerk in the league. Great. If he's the biggest jerk, if he's the biggest jerk in the entire solar system, that's not factored in here. Like, for him to say that, this is where the NFL should literally come in and say, you have been revoked for those comments.
Yeah, it's funny. There are certain times I get mad at Aaron Rodgers, but I love him as a football player. I think I could talk football if Aaron Rodgers.
Sure. I mean,
came off. But there are some things I don't like he does. For one, him yelling to the Bears, I own you. That's great. The Bears suck, dude. Like, it's just picking on the little sisters of the poor at that point. That's my issue with Aaron Rodgers. It's like the NFC North hasn't been good. But Aaron Rodgers has a lot to do with that too. It's a cause and effect scenario. But again, there are some things. I don't like how Aaron Rodgers always thinks he's the smartest guy in the room. But I like Aaron Rodgers. Like, it's not going to take away a vote. He's the MVP of the league, Mike. I don't know what else to tell you.
By the way, Jeff Kerr, I never thought I was going to have to use the dump button on you.
Oh yeah. I don't curse that much. But I was pretty fired up over that. I didn't tweet about it today, but.
I know. I was like, Josh is over there hitting the dump buttons and stuff.
Hey, I gotta call it like I see it, though. I don't curse much, but yeah.
That question was the first time not the first time I guess has cursed, but the first time that it's brought a non-athlete, I would say, I think. I've had players on and they just start going.
Oh, yeah, players don't care.
The UFC guys are notorious for using.
I've had players drop F-bombs at me, and I kind of laugh at it because he's like, well, you don't curse. I'm like, no, I'm there. But yeah, I get mad when sports writers do that. They hold a personal vendetta against somebody. It's not the way the business should be. That's just my opinion.
Jeff Kerr is brought to you by the expert solar team of New Jersey, EMT Solar Roofing, Solar Guardian. Start your solar journey today. Learn more. Visit Solar Guardian, ESPNSolar.com. All right, Jeff, we will talk Friday. Take a look at these playoff implications and all that and more.
Yeah, it sounds great, Mike.
All right.
I'll tell you what, you got to thank Aaron Rodgers, man. I saw that this morning. I was like, come on.
All right, man. Appreciate it. There's Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. All right, we'll wrap up the show, close it all up. Coming up next for 5:46. I got a lot of texts we want to empty out. The video chat has been very busy today. 609-403-0973. Last chance to get your texts in. Hit me up next. PropSwap is where America buys and sells sports bets. The college national championship is finally here, and prop swappers are cashing in. Like Jesse from New York, who sold his 100-to-1 Michigan college football ticket for $1,800 on prop. Like Jesse from New York, who sold his 100-to-1 college football ticket. Like Jesse from New York, who sold his 100-to-1 Michigan college football ticket for $1,800 on PropSwap. Jesse locked in his profit when he turned his $120 bet into $1,800. The buyer got great odds. The seller made 15 times his bet. PropSwap has thousands of buyers and sellers across the country, so you'll always find the best odds and collect the most money for your bets. The Alabama-Georgia showdown is Monday night, so hurry and download the free PropSwap app right now. All right, 5:51, getting ready to wrap up the show here on the Sports Bash, brought to you by Matt Blatt Nissan. The all-new Matt Blatt Nissan now open Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township, next to Home Depot, online, mattblattnissan.com. I'm Mike Gill. Tomorrow's show, we're busy. Keith Smith, Andrew's here for Football at 4. Anthony Becht, former first-round pick for the New York Jets. He's calling the action for Westwood 1 on Saturday night of the Eagles and the Cowboys. We'll do our first look at the NFL schedule. I guess doing the odds this week is very difficult because you don't know who's playing. Oh, Joe Burrow's out, right? Burrow's not going to play. Mixon's not playing. Looks like the Bengals aren't playing anybody.
Yeah, so as you know, I do the featured bet of the week, and that was going to be my bet of the week because I thought, well, the Bengals are theoretically still playing for seeding. And I thought the Browns might want to spoil it for them. And then I see last night, Burrow's not going to play. Mayfield's getting surgery. And I'm just like, all right,
Well,
there's that
Mayfield,
idea.
they're out of it, so I can understand
I
that.
thought the Browns, your division rivals, I'm going to spoil your opportunity to get a better seed for you.
Nah,
You know what I
that's
mean?
not enough.
But
You're going to spoil your opportunity. You're already there in the playoffs. You're not.
I don't know. I just feel like
I don't even see the schedule. Who's playing? I know it's all division games,
it's
right?
all division games. I mean, they talk about.
I have no problem with Mayfield not playing. He shouldn't have been playing, period.
Yeah, he
anyway.
needs surgery. I totally get that. But I mean, now
Burrow's not playing just because they don't want him to get hurt, right?
Pretty much.
Mixon's got COVID.
Mixon's got COVID. Although Mixon could theoretically return, but the rumor is that he's symptomatic, not asymptomatic. So that's an issue.
All right. Green Bay, Detroit has zero meaning.
I don't know who to believe with that game because Rodgers keeps pounding the table saying, I'm going to play. And the Packers are saying, like, LaFleur and them are acting like, well, this game, we really want to protect guys. So it's like, who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah, Chicago, Minnesota, that has no meaning. Washington, New York has no meaning.
I just want the Bears to win that game so Mike Zimmer gets fired.
Well, he's getting fired anyway.
I just want him to
You
be
think if
fired
Minnesota
faster.
wins, he's going to get – hey, great job beating the Bears.
I don't know. I feel like they kept Zimmer there too long. Zimmer right now feels like Andy Reid at the end of his run with the Eagles.
He's had a nice run there. No Super Bowl. They got to the NFC Championship game. They went all in on Cousins, and,
I don't think Cousins is a problem. I think Zimmer ran out of steam. I think Zimmer got away from...
they had a lot of injuries on defense, and he's
They had
a
a lot of
defensive
injuries,
guy.
but I think he got away from what made him successful.
They
early
could
on.
never get an offensive line for him there. Like, who's their GM out there?
Rick
Rick
Spielman.
Spielman's been there forever.
That's Howie's buddy.
Right, but
he's ripped off him twice.
It's funny that Spielman is Howie's buddy. Howie goes offensive line, and Spielman just completely neglects it.
Well, he keeps ripping him off. He keeps manipulating him to give him first-round picks.
That game has no meaning. New York, Washington, no meaning. Indianapolis, Jacksonville. Indianapolis needs that game. Pittsburgh, Baltimore has minimal playoff meaning. There's a situation in the Sunday night game where if they tie, they both get in. So would you have a gentleman's agreement before the game and just say, let's just tie?
I mean, if
0-0, you take a knee. I heard this morning on Good Morning Football. Just take a knee the whole game.
Literally,
Can you imagine that television product?
I think the NFL would lose their mind. I feel like if that started happening, the league would immediately pass a referendum to fix the problem before the second half started.
You think Roger Goodell would just transport himself to the field?
No, I think Goodell would get J.C. Tretter on the phone and say, we need to agree on something now.
So funny. I heard that discussion this morning. I was like, that's pretty good. Hey, we both can make the playoffs if we just tie 0-0. What do you say? I'm in. It's not like they would face each other.
No, they wouldn't
right?
at
So
all.
what's the difference? All right, we'll do more on the schedule tomorrow. Have a great night. Game night's up next. It's a Weinberg Wednesday with Dave Weinberg. Hey, coming up on Thursday, we're getting closer to the Eagles and Cowboys, plus Week 18. We'll take a look at the meaningful games. Keith Smith will talk a little NBA. Former first-round pick in the NFL, Anthony Becht, will talk some football with us, plus Rob Motti, and we'll recap the Sixers, Magic, and more. It's all Thursday.